Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I would like to welcome all the national and international colleagues and students. This is the online workshop series on data science ideas for aspiring statistical consultants. It is to be rendered by Professor Roger Stern and Dr. David Stern. So this is workshop number 1 of 5. This is today, and the next one is 3 weeks from now. My name is Saleha. I am professor of statistics at College for Women in Lahore, Pakistan. I'm also rendering services as honorary director of PyStar. I had been given the honor by the American Statistical Association for being the educational ambassador for Pakistan. Dr. Syed Wasim Abbas is the focal person, and he's assistant director at the Bureau of Statistics, Punjab, Lahore, Pakistan. And he's the one who sends you all those emails and all those things that are required. The PyStar team, in addition to me and Wasim, it consists of most dynamic people. Mr. Muhammad Iftikhar, who is the executive secretary of ISOS, Professor Muhammad Aslam, who is one of the senior most team members, Dr. Sharka Hashmi, Mr. Haris Khurram, Ms. Zulekha Mashkoor, Ms. Kamal Aslam, and Ms. Aqsa Abid. The international participants today, and before I show you the slide, I would like to apologize in advance because maybe we missed some name. And please do let us know by writing in the chat so that we can correct it very quickly. Professor Joachim Engel from Germany, Professor Aisha Belgen from Australia, Professor Enriqueta Reston from the Philippines, Dr. Daljit Singh Virk from the United Kingdom, Dr. Joyce Otieno from Kenya, Dr. Attila Guptas from Turkey, and Dr. Oslam Alma from Turkey, Dr. Reza Arabi Bilaghi from Iran, Dr. Kolawale Awi from Nigeria, Dr. Kiruki Adibanji from Ghana. Aksa, you would write Ghana here before we send it to everybody. And Mr. Mawara Thomas Muakutsa from Kenya, and Dr. Najla Muhammad Kala from Saudi Arabia. We have a lot of national participants also. Please, once again, my apologies in advance if some name is missing, because you see, all these things happen at the 11th hour. All the registrations suddenly start coming in. And so please do let us know if any name is missing here. Dr. Mariam Ibrar, Dr. Kulsoom Akhtar Chaudhry, Dr. Naila Alam, Dr. Itrat Batul Naqvi, Dr. Muhammad Kashif, Ms. Baliga Yunus, Ms. Zainab Waheed, Ms. Saima Laik, Ms. Saba Munir, Mr. Amir, I can't read there because this, Zoom black bar is on top of it. Apologies for that. Dr. Syed Muhammad Noman Ahmad Shah, Itret's name has been repeated. Dr. Asifa Kamal, Mr. Ansar Shehzadi, Ms. Aqsa, I think it should be Ms. Ansar Shehzadi, I'm not clear. Ms. Aqsa Rafiq, Ms. Hamna Asghar, I keep apologizing. Please forgive me for any mistakes I'm making now. Mr. Sarwar Vasi, Ms. Tabarka Rajab, Mr. Muhammad Ali Shah, and again, my apologies, I can't read it. I better escape it because otherwise I can't read what is on the bottom of that. So I will need to put it in this other mode. Okay, yeah, Mr. Muhammad Abdus Salam, and then Mr. Ahmad Nadeem, Ms. Uzma Maqsood, Mr. Muhammad Saeed, Mr. Qazanfar Etazaz Amjad, Ms. Mavish Shozab, Mr. Mustansar Etazaz Amjad, Ms. Zubair bin Junaid, Ms. Mariam Ibrar, Mr. Afzal Mahmood, Mr. Muhammad Sarwar. So, mashallah, we have a lot of participants this time. We are so excited. Now, this is the plan for the day. Uh, so we will be introducing Professor Roger Stern, and then, of course, also Dr. David Stern. And then they will begin the presentation on being statistical consultants. After that, they would like a participatory introduction of participants and also introduction to Moodle and expectation gathering. And the importance then after that of adaptability. And then we will have a short break so that everybody can rise from their seats and, have a little walk. And it's only 8 minutes, after which we will resume the um, workshop. And uh, the topic then will be, is data science unifying approaches to working with data? Then we will have after that interactive session on working with data. So ladies and gentlemen, you must be prepared for this now, that we will not be just listening, but we will also be doing some work ourselves. And then the importance of problem solving, and that would be it. After that, I would like to request the participants to provide feedback. And after that, we will have a short address by Dr. Alia Ahmed, who is the Senior Vice President of the ISOS Executive Board. And then we will have the vote of thanks and then the closing remarks. So I would like to begin by introducing Professor Roger Stern. Okay, once again, that same problem has occurred, which generally occurs. Now it is stuck. So I'm not able to escape it. And what do I do now? I stop share, because without stopping the share, I am generally not able to escape this thing. Okay, I've stopped the share and I will now put it back into that other mode, and then it will keep working. I'll start the share again. Apologies for this, but these things also keep happening. Uh, some things which are not in my control. So now let's proceed. I will proceed in this mode only. Um,
Nagmi, your sound is, very slow. Need, no, mic.
okay. All right, I'll try, because you see everybody, I want to share that my bigger laptop, something happened to its motherboard and it's still not come back. So apologies for the problem. Can you hear me? Dr. Vasim, can you hear me
Yes,
now?
Yes, we can hear, but very slow.
Dr. Nagmi, actually, your voice is quite low.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that I can't do anything about it because everything is full here. I have this problem at this moment that maybe if it's all right, can I continue?
But I am listening very clearly. But I am listening. I think there must be problem. But I am listening very clearly.
Okay, then there must be a signal problem. There's a lot of signal problem in Lahore at this time.
Yeah,
Okay, I will
I'm
continue.
also listening very clearly. No
Okay,
issue.
thank you very much. I will now proceed. Professor Roger Stern is Emerite Professor of Applied Statistics at the University of Reading. His main interests are climatic statistics and improving the teaching of statistics at the undergraduate and graduate level. Uh, Professor Roger Stern works part-time with Stats for SD, that is Statistics for Sustainable Development, which is a not-for-profit social enterprise established in May 2016. It's exactly 5 years old now. The organization promotes better use of statistical methods for decision making to benefit society and the environment. At this organization, Roger leads the organization's work with national and international meteorological services. Um, and this is, when you go to their website, this is what you get to see: stats for sustainable development. Roger has been a driving force in establishing partnerships with organizations with whom Stats for SD shares objectives and values including the Southampton Statistical Sciences Research Institute of the University of Southampton, the African Math Initiative in Kenya, and the African Institute of Mathematical Sciences in Tanzania. Roger also works on the e-learning portfolio of Stats for SD. Professor Stern has previously worked for the University of Colombo in Sri Lanka, and he has also worked at the Institute of Agricultural Research in Zaria in Nigeria, and also the International Crop Research Institute for the Semi-Arid Tropics in Niamey, Niger. So it's a delight to have him with us. And I actually cannot thank him and David enough for what they are going to do for us. I'm sure it's going to be excellent. I would now like to request my colleague, Dr. Sharka Hashmi, to present the resume of Dr. David Stern. Dr. Sharka, would you want me to continue the slides? Is it all
Okay,
right?
it's okay for me.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much, Dr. Salia. A very good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. David Stern, and David Stern is a mathematical scientist and educator. He is former lecturer in School of Mathematics, Statistics, and Actuarial Sciences at Messina University in Kenya, and a founding board member of African Maths Initiative, AMI. David lived in Niger in Francophone West Africa for the whole of his secondary schooling. Taking the French baccalaureate, he then worked as a professional programmer in London. At university, David took a maths degree, including an Erasmus year in Germany, graduating first class honors and a German diploma. He is passionate about education and first taught undergraduates during this degree. Dr. David Stern is interested in many branches of mathematics and statistics and thrives on interactions with people in different fields. The first year of his PhD was in 2 years with separate supervisors. He then focused on his work on algebraic geometry with Professor Bridgeland in Sheffield. He has lectured at Messina University, Kenya since 2008 and was the chair of the postgraduate committee for the School of Mathematics, Statistics, and Actuarial Sciences, as well as the coordinator content development for the eCampus. From 2014 to 15, David was the Director Project Development for AIMS NEI, African Institute of Mathematical Sciences Next Einstein Initiative. From 2013 to 17, he was a Vice President of the IASE, International Association of Statistics Education. And from 2015 to 17, he was a mathematical scientist at the University of Reading. In 2018, Dr. David Stern founded IDEMS International, Innovations in Development, Education, and the Mathematical Science, a community interest company. And David was also put on the capacity building task force for ISI, International Statistics Institute.
Thank you very much. And ladies
Over
and
to you.
gentlemen, thank you very much, Dr. Sharka. Ladies and gentlemen, David is also on the advisory board of the International Statistical Literacy Project, and he's also an ISI council member. So after this introduction, we would like to start the workshop. And David, I will now stop sharing. And Roger and David, both of you, you can now begin your part.
Thank you so much. Roger will start in just a second. I will share the screen. Okay.
Can people hear me? I haven't been talking as much.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Saleha. It was a bit daunting for the two of us to hear how our history done so much like that. The one thing I would
Actually,
perhaps
Roger, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but these are the cultural differences. In the eastern part, as you've been in Sri Lanka, the things happen slightly differently.
well, this is why we travel to places like Sri Lanka, because we find them so enriching. And I have to say, I would also like to thank you for something else that David suddenly announced a few years ago that he was going to wander off to Pakistan, which was at your invitation. And he came back wildly enthusiastic and said, we have to do more there. It is so exciting working there. And I think I now begin to understand that, but it's a little bit daunting. I hope we live up for all the participants to this this series of workshops. And you mentioned the cultural differences. I would like to add that this is partly Pakistan, but Saleha has made the big mistake of using two people from the UK as the main resource people. Now, in the UK, we speak very honestly and critically. And then we learn. And so I'd be very happy. I know in Pakistan, people will want to be polite, and we learn from that because we're not always polite enough in the West. But if you could be polite and constructively critical, that would be wonderful. And so the next time we give this series, it will be even better for you. So you've seen these are data science ideas for aspiring statistical consultants. And my first part in this is to try and think what would a statistical consultant do as opposed to maybe a university lecturer in statistics or somebody working as a statistician in the National Statistics Office or in a university generally. And so we want to share experiences from statistical consultancy. As Saleha said, we moved into a little company called Stats for SD in 2016. However, we moved as a sort of spin out from the university where we were in the Statistical Services Center. And so we've been working as consultants, or I've been working as consultants in the Statistical Services Center based in Reading University, which was a self-financing group since the early 80s. And as self-financing, we had to earn our keep. And so our consultancy actually goes back quite a long way. And so I'm going to share you a few ideas and challenges to you from statistical consultancy. So we're stepping towards data science. And we expect you to have, in taking this series, some statistical skills. We accept these statistical skills. Some of you will be very practical and some may be theoretical. We like theory. And we expect you to have some computing skills. And most people we find are pretty neat at using spreadsheets with their data. And you may have some experience with statistical software. And I was hearing from Saleha that many people use SPSS, and that's great. It's the most popular statistics package in the world. And we assume as you've come on this workshop or this series of workshops that you're a bit curious how you might add some data science skills, and possibly you do more data science than we do. And so you're curious as to how two statisticians can even have the nerve to tell you about data science, but you're working towards data science. And if you're already a statistical consultant, you might wonder how you can help your students or how you can go towards a career so that they're good in a career in statistics. There's so many jobs in statistics that can be done with people who have data skills. Next slide. Yep. So this is what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and take you towards data science from statistics, and in this first session. And then a lot of data science, people like to look at graphs. And I think that very exciting things are that looking visually at data has been a tremendous advance. And of course, looking at visually at quite large sets of data, it becomes quite a challenge. And so that's the second session. We find that often in our statistics training, we always had data nicely in the form so that we could do a t-test or analysis of variance. The real world isn't like that. So a lot of data science, we're finding, involves getting the data into shape so we can look at it, and that's tidying of data. And then two areas which we think are rather statistical, because sometimes when we talk to data scientists, they don't understand them. So we've written them as context matters, a statistical perspective. And so, for example, we're going to be looking at one of these large surveys from UNICEF that you very kindly provided. And we need to know where that's all come from and the structure of the data. And we also, in the last session, are going to look at the context, but take it slightly from a data science point of view, because sometimes we find that statisticians are too obsessed by the context, and they go too far in that direction. That can make them over negative in their support for other people's work on their data. The next slide.
So maybe before we go to the next slide, let me just come in on this last point. The key point is that context matters whether you're taking a statistical perspective or a data science perspective. But when taking a data science perspective, you often have to leave behind some of the structures which statisticians use to manage context. And so that's really where this difference really comes in. But it doesn't diminish the importance of the context and where your data comes from and how it's collected. Okay, let's carry on. I'll let you carry on, Roger.
Okay, so it's not just the two of us. As you heard, David was a lecturer for a number of years at Maseno University, which is a university in Western Kenya, which has become pretty dynamic at being imaginative in the way they teach. And just as one example, James Musioka has been teaching handling data for his descriptive course in, I think, a new imaginative way, even though his class had 1,000 students and he had no demonstrators to help him. So how does one do that? Francis, you've heard of AIMS, this African Institute for Mathematical Sciences, which is taking the best Africans from their first degree and giving them a very enlightened, I think, master's course. And we've got involved in helping to teach them statistics. And that's often an eye-opener because as I gather in Pakistan, many statistics graduates have who learn statistics in their first degree, they have no idea about data. And now many AIMS graduates are starting to have an MSc in data science. Danny Parsons is, I hesitate to say he's a David lookalike because he's extremely slim, but he's another items director. There are two directors, one is David and the other is Danny. And they've worked together as colleagues. And he is a junior version of David in starting with a very strong mathematics background. And without formal teaching in statistics, is now basically working very largely as is he a statistician or is he a data scientist? I hesitate to ask him. And Santiago, we heard about Argentina, and Santiago is British, but he's also from Argentina. And he's our educational expert. And we're going to be mentioning an exciting thing for teaching, particularly called Stack. And so he's our Stack master. And so these are other people who you will hear about briefly during this series of workshops that we've been working with very closely and will continue to work with.
And who are part of this series of workshops. They are each contributing to the series in some way through the course of the 5 sessions.
And they've already started by helping us with the Moodle site, which you will see later in this session. Now we're going to actually get into becoming, how does one become a statistical consultant? So I graduated with a degree in statistics, and my first job as a junior statistician was at Reading University many, many years ago. And at Reading University, we actually provided an advisory service free of charge to students and staff in the university. And so we had no choice but to be consultants, however theoretical our background had been. We were put down and we had to do consultancy. And here is my first ever consultancy question in my first week as a statistics lecturer at the University of Reading. And it was in fact a student, a young student, and she said, I'm extremely embarrassed with this design problem because it is so simple that I really don't think I should have come to see you. I'm doing a problem on tadpoles. It's very simple. I want to see, tadpoles are little frogs, if anybody is not clear. So tadpoles are tadpoles before they become frogs. And she was doing an experiment to look at these tadpoles, and she wanted to see how fast they grew in water of different temperatures. And she had 3 different temperatures she was going to use, and she was going to measure the tadpoles. And I thought there was more about this. Is it on the next slide or is it just missing? Can you have a look at the next slide, David, just to see if it's there? Okay. And the problem she had was that should she, and this was her question, I'm so embarrassed, she said, but should I have many jars with a few tadpoles in each, or a few jars with more tadpoles in each? How many jars and how many tadpoles should I have? And then she said, I'm really, just please tell me the answer, and then I will leave and I won't use up any more of your valuable time. And I thought about that for a minute, and the only answer I thought I could give is, well, you know, this isn't such a silly question. In fact, it's a very sensible question. And when you come tomorrow, I will give you an answer to your question. I need to think about this a bit more. And she was rather surprised and she left. And I thought about it as much as I could. I then thought, it's something to do with my design course. It's a little experiment. But then I looked at my notes on experimental design, and I found they weren't on design at all. They were called the design and analysis of experiments, but actually they were on the analysis of designed experiments. They didn't tell me about the design questions. And then I looked for tadpoles on my shelf. We didn't have Google at the time. I'm not sure Google would have helped me. I was in such trouble. Eventually I did something that I think many statistical consultants have to do to begin with. I went next door, and some of the lecturers or the professors here may know of a statistician who sadly has passed away now called Roger Mead, who became quite well known in agricultural statistics. And he had the room next door, and I knocked on his door and I said, I've got a very silly, simple question. And I found I went to ask him just about every week for the first 2 years. And then I learned a bit more about consultancy questions. People in stats offices now will think I'm being ridiculous because it's the same sort of question. I'm doing a survey in many villages. Do I do a lot of people in a few villages or a few people in lots of villages? And so it's a very common question, but I just had no way of getting close. So there's a problem. And I'd only been taught about analysis. My course was very theoretical and it only taught me analysis. I just had no discussion or thoughts about design. I learned it on the job. Let's go to the second question. So the second topic is more recent. We have a thing called CCRP. It's the Collaborative Crops Research Program. And we provide in the organization I work for, and it started within the university, that we provide statistical support for research projects to improve agroecological intensification for agricultural researchers. And the work is in 10 countries. And it's usually with the National Agricultural Research Program. Of course, they have their own statisticians, but they needed a little bit more. So we've been doing this for the past 12 years, and it's our biggest piece of work. If that stops, our group is in trouble. So we've carried on doing that. And I want to show you what we think is statistics for CCRP. So here it is. And this is how we explain it to the grantees, who are usually agricultural researchers, that this is where we're going to try and help them. And they say, but this doesn't look like anything to do with the statistics I've been taught. They've mainly been taught, if you look at these 9 boxes for this support, they've mainly been taught about statistical analysis. And even within statistical analysis, some of the things haven't been taught. So when we start, and we do have the luxury that many statistical analysts don't have, we start at the beginning with these problems. And so we actually start, as you've seen with the top left, on data ownership. We tell people this is funded internationally. And so all the data you collect, you can publish all the papers you like, but you must make sure that it's available freely for people to use afterwards. And if you don't think about that right at the beginning, then the data come in a big mess of Excel files and nobody knows what's going on, and you can't even share it with yourself rather than others. So there's an interesting component of data ownership which links directly to the data collection and the data entry part of the support we give for CCRP.
And
we have to help them in the planning.
So let me, before you move on
David.
from data ownership, actually one of the examples that I will give from myself later, actually one of the changes in data ownership has transformed the projects, where instead of the researchers owning the data, the farmer federations owned the data. And that just transformed power dynamics in really positive ways. And so actually thinking through that data ownership, whose data is it? Is it the person being interviewed? Are they giving up their data to the researcher? Or is it something which continues to serve them and is really them, and the researcher is just facilitating that process? This is something which we'll come into later, but it's part of the CCRP work.
So you maybe see, and I will give you an example later, where for a group in an African country which had a lot of statisticians even sitting in the agricultural institutes, but they were not giving the breadth of support that was needed by these projects. And you see in the last box on the bottom right, I'm not going to go through all the boxes, that so many of the research, unless you're careful, it does surveys or it does a participatory exercise, and many of these were done, as well as experiments. But then the people doing those exercises were then ignored afterwards as the researchers wrote it up. That's not allowed. You really need to go back to the people who helped you, often free of charge, and share the results with them for 2 reasons. One is, if you're nice to them, then you can go back again to learn more things. But also, you learn so much more by interacting. So this looks as if it's a set of arrows that finish down here, but of course it goes up and down like this. So let's go on to the next. So that's made us realize that this is what we should be teaching, and we should actually, this is what usually happens. But in many places, the data analysis is even bigger. And sometimes these problem analysis, these objectives are not studied at all. Until they're involved in training, it's not going to work. And so we are arguing that whether you're teaching statistics or data science, often we find we have no problem when we look at a syllabus with what is taught, but we do have some problems if you want to train useful people in what is not taught. And we would like to change the balance from this tremendous emphasis on data analysis to having a lot of emphasis on data analysis, because it's so important and it's what other people don't do. But there are other parts to statistics. And I think you'll find we've just added this. So we're not yet getting to data science, that the Royal Statistical Society definition is very much involved in this. And I do like one component of it. I'm going to read just one bit. Statistics changes numbers into information. That's quite nice. It's the art and the science of deciding what are the appropriate data to collect, and so on. I do like this idea that it's the art and the science, and it's all concerned with what data should be collected, as well as the data that's going to be analyzed. And there's a lot of definitions of statistics. I rather like this one, but I would like people to be teaching the subject of statistics and not just the small part of the sort of theory of analysis, because it's just one of those boxes. Okay, that's the second. My third example is that we all like to stay in our comfort zone, and sometimes that doesn't help us. So this is an agricultural researcher in West Africa, and cotton is a crop that makes money, and there's a tax on cotton in many countries, and that the Cotton Board in this country funded the agricultural research on cotton. And the Cotton Board went to the researcher on cotton and said, we need some help here. We used to have good rains. This is a climate problem. We used to have good rains in September and early October, but they don't seem to be happening anymore. This climate change has hit us. By the way, this was 20 years ago. So now they said, we plant our cotton earlier. But this change in the rainfall is a fickle thing, and sometimes it doesn't happen. And then some of you may know better than I do that you need the cotton to have rainfall, but if when it's ripening and you get the cotton bolls, you have rainfall, that's no good and they rot. So planting earlier can have its problems in the year when the rains don't stop when they should. So their challenge to him, when should they plant their cotton? When's the optimal day for planting cotton? Dear researcher, please answer this question. We're paying you. So this is what he did. The first thing he did was said, this is a climate problem, so I must go to the climate people. And so he got in touch with them, as I did through Dr. Saleha, as Dr. Saleha did for me, because we're going to have some climatic data for you, I'm afraid. Climate change is an important subject just now, and not many statisticians seem to be working on it. And as you've heard, it's one of my passions. So this guy contacted the Met Department, and they supplied daily rainfall data for 3 stations in the cotton growing area. However, the training for the agricultural researcher had nothing to do with how to analyze those rainfall data. It was all a rather traditional course on agricultural statistics, so he knew how to design experiments. So instead of analyzing the data, he decided he could answer the questions by having a planting date trial. And so he had 6 treatments, which were 6 alternative planting dates, 4 replicates. And many of you who've done experimental design will see this is a very simple experiment. It's good to have multiple years, especially in this problem. So he repeated it for 3 years. Now, remember that now it's 3 years since he was asked the question, and he hasn't been back with any answers. And after the end of the 3 years, he had a seminar, a statistics workshop, which I was running. And this was designed to analyze the data. And he was very relieved. And he wanted 2 things. Please analyze the data to answer the questions for the Cotton Board. And how should he continue his experiment? Because he was enjoying himself doing these experiments. It's what agricultural people like to do. And so we then discussed. We analyzed the experimental data, and we found it was very easy. You know, if you've got simple training, you can analyze a randomized block design. And the researcher initially was extremely happy, but he then found he became unhappy rather quickly, because he found what was, I think, obvious, that the best planting date was different each year. And when he thought about that for a bit and thought logically about his memory of the rainfall, he knew that already. And so did the people who'd asked the questions. And I have some more conclusions from this. The first is he should have analyzed the climatic data, and he could have done that in a few days. He was given 40 years of data for these 3 places. And if he couldn't do it himself, he could ask for help. I have another more bold decision. If you are doing statistical consultancy and people come with a planting date trial, don't ever allow them to do that with a single factor of planting date, because you'll always get the answer you knew already. I'm not saying don't do planting date trials. I'm saying learn a bit about factorial design. I don't mind a planting date trial if you also include varieties or fertilizer or anything else. Learn enough about factorial design to have multiple factors. But planting date on its own should be banned completely. It's going to teach you nothing. And then, of course, I have a training example because, as you've heard, my passion is to improve statistics teaching. Don't just teach about experiments. So his comfort factor should have allowed him to look at different sorts of data because there are different sorts of problems. My next example. I think this is the last example. And this is an example where it's an on-farm experiment. The previous experiment was on station. This is on-farm. And there were two different sites, a total of 32 farmers, and there were 11 treatments. And 7 of them were different legumes. And this was cowpea with 4 standards. And the idea was to choose the most promising treatment for further study. Now, this was on farm rather than on station. And the idea was the results were to be discussed with farmers. And that's one reason it was on farm. Let's have a look at the next slide. And here's the yield. And we showed these data to a whole group of statisticians, and we challenged them to come up with the analysis. Now, these data are unbalanced because the farmers, there were 11 treatments. The farmers used some of the treatments, not all of them. And there was additional data about the farmers. We're just showing you the yield here, which gave the soil type and the data planted. But we told the statisticians these data did exist, but the initial task was then for them to give a plan of their analysis. And we asked them as a challenge, you could have got this data from an on-station trial or an on-farm trial. If you have on-station and on-farm data, is the analysis, which looks the same, is the analysis always the same, or might it be different? Are the needs different for on-station, on-farm, or does the data dictate the analysis? You begin to see an example of, you can picture the answer maybe, because our later sessions are going to say context matters. On station and on farm is part of the context. So it's the same data, but does the context matter? And the results, all the statisticians proposed analysis of variance. It's non-orthogonal, but that's fine, we can cope with that. Some of the statisticians combined it over 2 sites, others started with separate analyses. And then all the statisticians were keen to talk about what are the methods they should have tested the separation of the means. They all wanted to, that's an area of big controversy, isn't it? And they wanted to discuss this. What a nice statistical question. And here's the analysis. The problem is that their analysis was absolutely correct and didn't answer the questions. So here's the first step in the analysis that the farmers and the people for whom we were working for were very happy with. So here's the answer. The next slide, please. That doesn't look as much like analysis of variance. It was a heat map done in Excel. And everybody was very excited when they looked in detail. Namely, there were some farmers who were good for all the treatments. They're sort of at the top. There were other farmers where the treatments were not so good. But there were quite a lot of farmers where a particular variety did very well and others didn't do so well. I wonder why. What was it about those farmers that meant that they were so different and could grow particular varieties well? You see, in on-farm experiments, the farmer's interested in his own yields or her own yields. The mean is not particularly important. It's of some importance. On station, I think means and standard errors are fine. On farm, the mean yield of a variety is not much interest or to a farmer if his yield is nothing like that. So individual yields become so much more important, and you're looking for pattern in the data, not necessarily anything which reduces to the analysis of variance, which largely looks at means. And this was an experiment with about 30. In the era when I worked in West Africa, doing an on-farm experiment with 30 or 40 or 100 farmers was the maximum you would get to, because there were costs involved. And that's my fourth example. And I know David now wants to talk about his first example.
Well, before I get into this, I'm conscious we're running over time already. I think if you allow us, we'll continue and we'll catch up the time later. So we'll finish this first part on the statistical consultancy. And so the part that I want to really get into here is my first experience. And this is, I started as a pure mathematician. I then got into teaching statistics to master's students, and I was given probability theory because that was the most theoretical course on the master's degree of applied statistics. I then became a bit known as a statistics educator because I found when I started trying to teach that theoretically, it wasn't what the students needed. They needed more applied skills as well. And so I started to innovate in the teaching, really learning from the team at Stats for SD or Statistical Services Center at the time about how to give people skills that they need beyond the classroom. And so I started integrating that into the teaching of statistics that I was doing at a master's level. And from there, I eventually got sucked in to projects where I was acting as a statistical consultant. And so, coming from this really strong theory background, my very first big project where I offered substantial support was interesting because I was supporting a farmer federation that had been given a grant to do a research project. They didn't have big problems. Most of what I had to help them with was in Excel, helping them with data cleaning, helping them organize their data, helping them to recognize that in the experimental design, they had chosen to put the treatment that they were most interested in alongside a fertilizer. And so a standard fertilizer treatment, a microdose of fertilizer, so that you had absolutely no information about what was causing the effect. So when that treatment was effective, it was just totally confounding whether it was the human urine, which they were interested in, or the microdose of fertilizer, which they'd also applied to that treatment of traditional fertilizer.
David,
so,
can I interrupt you?
Yes.
I think I could hear Roger very well, but I think you need to speak a bit louder, maybe.
Or I could put my headphones on and have a different microphone.
Yes.
I'm very rarely told I need.
Sorry about that.
Hello, is that clearer?
Oh, yes, it's better.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And so, so experimental design, it was such a simple thing of recognizing that in a treatment, if you want to study something, then you need to have comparison without a confounding effect. These were the simple things that I was needed, not using any of the theory I had learned, but this is what they needed to have my support and to do better. Over the next couple of years, that group simplified their design based on their key objectives. We honed in on the objectives they cared about, on what they were trying to find out, and they simplified their design, and it was really effective. Interestingly, the other thing they did was we found that there was a huge amount of variability And one sort of thing that we mentioned in passing is that this could be because they had small plots and the soil that they had was highly variable. And so maybe if they had bigger plot sizes, they would reduce that internal variability that they had within those experimental units. And based on these two changes alone, they suddenly got these incredibly convincing results, which showed that human urine was a really effective fertilizer for them in their environment. It was having a substantial impact on the crop, and it was convincing, not just academically, scientifically doing the analysis, but the farmers on the ground were convinced. I mean, just to tell you how convinced, that part of the country now has a trade in human urine. It is sold as a fertilizer. And so, this is something where from that, things then got really interesting, because now this was a farmer federation doing research. And they actually then, through the grant that they had, through the research grant, they employed a computer scientist, built them their own custom app, which they then used to collect data, not just of a few of their farmers, but of 17,000 farmers. They had now experiments where they were now testing this, not with tens of farmers, but with thousands of farmers, where they were contributing to this, and through the app, they were now collecting the data and it was coming back. And, in the research process, they were no longer just, they had, as the Farmer Federation, they had ownership of the data. So they were now an equal partner with the research, with the academics at the university, at the research organizations. And they were changing the way that research was done, because instead of always going back to do a baseline survey, they had the data on their farmers, and they could provide that data to the researcher if they were doing their work with them in a collaborative way. And it totally transformed the way research was happening. And so one of the things is, obviously, I started my experience as a statistical consultant a few years after Roger. But one of the things which I think is really significant here is that even with such simple questions to begin, what happened at the beginning is it was the same simple, basic things that were needed. But actually, when you look at where they are now, it is no longer traditional statistical design. Now in what they're doing, in the way they're working with data, they're needing ideas from data science. And this is something which is coming up more and more, that good research, really good research, is often not as disconnected anymore from the actual population scale data in one form or another that can contribute to the problem. Subjects like citizen science are bringing up data in ways which is incomparable to what was there before. And just the simple accessibility of data in the world we live in today, it has transformed what we can do with data. And this means that my experience in statistical consultancy very quickly led me beyond traditional statistics as the only requirement for the people I was supporting. They very quickly needed these new ideas. I'm going to hand back to Roger now, and I think we might leave this until after the break and come back to this later. What do you think, Roger? You're muted.
I think we'll finish here. We'll leave these two slides and consider this as finished.
Yeah.
Okay,
great.
We're handing back to the next bit of the program. I'm not sure what that is.
I'll take over from there. This was sort of the next part of the program. We were going to do some simple introductions. I'm going to just share another part of my screen. We have a Moodle course, and we're in the process of trying to register people on that course. We've used your first names and your email addresses. Danny, if you're there. Do you want to just sort of talk me through the process? I hope we've captured almost everybody who's here today, but I will provide this link in the chat. And so
Yes.
it's
So
there.
I've tried to upload everyone with an account on our Moodle site. You need to log in with your email address, and there's a default password which I'll put in the chat, which you can then change once you log in.
And
Should
and
have
what
just
I
been
would
done
say
now.
is,
So
if you the email addresses are what you had provided to Saleha, and so if you have a problem, please let Danny know in the chat. And in here, what we're going to ask people to do, if they are comfortable doing so, is we're going to go to the introduction. We're going to ask you to go to the introduction forum and just write a simple post introducing yourself. And so you'll see some of us have already
David,
done
I
that.
think,
And
I
so,
think I'm not clear exactly what I'm going to do right now.
yes, so we will help. I will talk you through this slightly more clearly. So in the chat now, there is a link to the Moodle course, which is this Moodle course called Pi-Star Workshop on Data Science for Aspiring Statistical Consultants. We're going to try and help people log in there. You should log in to the site using your email address with the password which has been provided in the chat.
So if I have understood correctly, where you have given this link, I should click on this link inside the chat.
Yes.
Okay.
And
but I'm not getting anything.
you're not getting
Maybe
anything when you click.
Maybe I should copy it or something.
If you click on the link, you should be able to go to it, and then it should ask you to sign in. And when you sign in, you should try signing in using you have successfully logged in. Thank you for letting us know that. Great. If you try with your email address to log in to that site, then you'll do that. And I'd suggest that what we will do is we will have so once these instructions are clear, we will then sort of maybe go into breakout rooms to allow people to introduce themselves to each other in smaller groups, as there are actually a few too many of us to all do it together. And we will then come back and just have a few moments on that. The 5 questions that we were hoping that people would do really correspond to these 5. We're going to put you into small breakout rooms as well, so that you can introduce yourself orally to a small subset. And then we'll come back together to try and do this. But the hope is that if people are able to sort of log on, then they will be able to introduce themselves on the introduction forum, so that we can get a sense of really who's in and on the course. Anybody who's got problems logging in, I suggest maybe instead of joining the breakout room when that is provided, you might stay behind, and I would help you to then carry on. I've got currently, I'm about to so let me just clarify again the aim of this part. We would like people to introduce themselves to each other. I've created 6 different rooms, each with 6 or 7 people in. When I open them, we would like you to do this task of the introduction forums. Just tell each other your name, your institution and role, what you hope to get out of these workshops, and anything you are worried about related to the workshops, and share something with you, something nice that has happened recently. So I will just demonstrate this for myself, as I have done here, My name's David Stern. I'm a mathematical scientist and director of IDEMS International. I hope that these workshops will help ISTAR supporting aspiring statistical consultants in Pakistan and beyond to succeed in the current data-rich world. I am worried that the experience and insights that we can share in these workshops will only be a small contribution when participants may have varied needs. And I would like to share that with lockdown easing in the UK recently, I've been really happy that my kids are finally able to play with their cousins again. And it's made a huge difference because they love it. And so that's what I'd like everybody to just do quickly in their rooms. I'm going to open the rooms and I'm going to give people 10 minutes for this introduction. And then we'll come back, and I'd request that if there could be one person in each room at least who takes note particularly of the workshop expectations and the concerns, the hopes and the worries, that would be really useful for us to collect at the end. Okay, any questions before I send us into our breakout rooms? I see we have an invalid login. There have been, yeah, you shouldn't need to create a new account. If you can't with yours, please just send us the email and we will try and follow up. So
Okay.
if you haven't been successful and would like some help, please stay, don't join your breakout room.
Okay. It's thank you very much, David. It's Dr. Ethel from Pakistan. Actually, I have it already in the Moodle from my institution. So can I log it from there?
No, this is a different Moodle site. Unfortunately, you'll need to log into this site. It is everything on our site is open, so we can share it with you if there's anything you'd like to take onto your institutional Moodle. But you'll need to come onto our Moodle site for this course because our course doesn't exist on your site.
But when I tried according to your instructions, this message I got it, which I copy paste over there. That's an invalid message. I write the same name, ethel@epsicollege.edu.pk, and the same password which you have given to us.
Okay, so let me then just try and debug that. Danny, maybe you can stay behind as well. Once you're in the Moodle site, if you go to the introductions, you can also do your introduction post. There is an introductory forum and you can just introduce yourself there as well as doing it in your breakout room.
Yes.
Is that okay? And then so anyone like yourself who's having these difficulties, please stay behind and we'll try and debug and correct the problems there.
David,
okay, thank you.
This is Saleha. What happened was that as soon as I clicked on that thing, something happened here and I got disconnected. So now I have joined you again. I was not here for 1 minute or two because when I clicked on that link, I just got disconnected.
Okay, well, let us try and sort out what the problems were at your end and we'll try and help you with that again. Okay, so I'll open the rooms for the breakout rooms. Please introduce yourselves if you've successfully got into the Moodle. If you want help, please remain behind. Thank you. So there's a few people who here, let me put these in. Great, thank you, Danny, for adding the extra people. If you hadn't got if it isn't working for you, please send your email to the chat and we will try and add it and check that is working.
Yeah, I think we maybe didn't have everyone's email before, so some people might not have accounts yet.
Can you guide me what I'm supposed to do?
So I have sent again the link in the chat. If you try that again, I hope that it will work this time for you.
Okay, I'm clicking right now.
Okay, Saliha, we might have used your other email address. I will check that. Yeah. Okay, Saliha, let me try and. Saliha, yes, we used your other email address, your Connect College email address.
Now, the problem is that I cannot get into that email. I mean, I cannot go from there because I don't remember its password and it's very complicated for me. So is
Okay,
it
so let us
possible?
replace that. I can replace that with your other email, your Gmail.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay.
I can do that.
Okay, thanks, Danny. Yeah, you're going to be faster than me. Okay, so let's see how many more.
Anyone else who's having a problem, please could you let them know? We would like everybody to be a part of this whole thing. So please don't be shy and
Dear
please let
David,
us know.
Yes.
Dr. David, we log in as guest.
No. Please, if you give us your email, we'll make sure you have a proper account.
Yes, I send my email in the chat.
Okay.
Kashif,
Okay.
Kashif. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that
That
now.
should be in. Okay, great.
Oh, you do have it. Yeah, your account is there. So you can log in.
So now,
You should be
Danny,
able to use that with the password.
should I click on that same link now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I don't get anything by clicking on that link.
Maybe try copy and paste into the browser.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you. I am logged in as Muhammad Kashif.
Wonderful.
Using this
Great.
code. Yes.
Great. You could now join the breakout room if you would like. Now, how are other people doing? Is there anyone else we can help? Saliha has been disconnected again, unfortunately.
No, I'm still there. I'm trying
Okay,
to
good.
somehow. Okay, now it says
Yeah.
data skills, username, password.
Yep.
Remember username.
So your username is now your Gmail account. That is your Gmail account email.
Okay.
And your password is the one that was provided in the chat. Yes. Okay, great. can see this is sort of, thanks
Password.
Danny for getting all this sorted.
Which one is the password? Danny, could you?
Dr. David,
Yes.
this is Dr. Kulsum. Actually,
Yeah.
we have been given link and we were able to join the breakout room, but we don't know how to introduce ourselves. I was able to, get into the, Moodle link using my own email ID and the password you have provided. But I think we have missed something. We were into the breakout room number 6 because we were asked to join that. So we are back now, but we don't know what to do further.
Oh, sorry. I thought the idea was in the breakout rooms, you could introduce yourself orally to each other in the breakout room. So you got to know a small group of people. But we're going to have to call everybody back now anyway. So I will be closing the breakout rooms in just a minute. So I think it's okay. We're all coming back together now here anyway. I think this is, yeah. And we only have a few minutes now before we need to take the break as it is. So I think we will,
we can,
we'll have to carry on with the introduction exercise as we move forward.
David, we are flexible about it always in our workshops. So if you need, we can shift the, the break by 5 minutes or 10 minutes.
I think it's okay. I think I'd rather try to keep on time as much as possible, so that we respect people's time. And although we're running a few minutes late, I think we can catch up and have the break on time. People will be coming back in just 15 seconds. In the break, we can continue to troubleshoot any problems people have been having. I think everybody is now on their way back in. So, I'm delighted to see how many people, the number of people have managed to sort of fill in their introductions.
I'm not able to join in because I tried my email and password several times. But
okay, so if there were problems, we will try and deal with them in the break. I'm glad that a number of people have managed to do their introductions, and I'm sure if other people can do that at a later date, that would be really great, so that people can get to know one another. And this is also part of the reason for this part was to try and encourage both small groups, people to introduce to each other orally, but also to get used to using Moodle, which we will see as one of the sort of key ways that we can interact even beyond the sessions themselves. So we have 5 minutes before the break, and in these 5 minutes, one of the things that we wanted to just draw out, which came a bit from our experience, is some final remarks on the statistical consultancy about the importance of adaptability and being able to change what you were thinking of doing based on the interactions you're having, who you're working with. And so, Roger, would you like to just make a few remarks about that first, and then I will come in?
Okay. I've been involved in consultancy in some countries where there's a lot of statisticians and others where there aren't any, and particularly in agricultural research. In one country where there weren't any, I asked, why aren't there any statisticians here anymore? There used to be. And they said, well, the senior statistician was good, but most of the other statisticians just played by the rules, and they were too negative. They kept saying, if I hadn't been to them when I designed my experiment, I shouldn't come to them now with the data. They weren't helpful. And so when we had to reduce the staff, we got rid of the people who weren't helpful. So all the statisticians left. And I was hearing from ICE at the introduction that it's a shock sometimes to statisticians that with the consultancy, the first question we ask is usually we first ask to look at the data. And then we say, well, why did you collect the data? What were your objectives? Is there a protocol so that we can understand why you did this? And the next thing I would like to mention before handing it back to David is that we tend to find that too many people think there's an answer. And we find with most sets of data there's lots of answers. None of them is absolutely correct, but there's lots of different approaches and different answers. And one really has to be rather flexible. We find that too often people, any set of data can be thought of as multivariate, and therefore I can apply my favorite multivariate method to it. We're not clear that's going to always provide the answers. We do like the idea of flexibility. That's a few words from me. David.
Yeah, and I think just to complete this adaptability to understand what you can get out of it. The number of times I've been brought data by someone and then ask them what their objective is and had to say, I'm sorry, you can't answer that objective with that data. But the data can tell you this. What can you find out from the data? Is that of interest? What else are you interested in? Maybe the objective, what you really want to know, the data you've got cannot answer that. And then you need to be clear that that data can't answer that question. But that doesn't mean that it's not important, that the work they've done has value and that there isn't information that can be drawn out of it. And very often that adaptability of being able to interact and say, well, actually, if you've got this data, what objectives do you have, which might be secondary objectives, but that where this data can provide the answer and can help you to take a next step. And that's very often what we find ourselves needing to do, is to help people to take their next step from where they are. And the expression I really like on this is, as a statistical consultant, the most important thing to do is to meet people where they are. That there's no point doing the statistical consultancy if it's not what people need at that point in time. Even if you take the example that I gave of my first my first group that I worked with substantially over a number of years, what they need now is totally different to what they needed a few years ago. And it's the fact that we've gone on that journey together that has really been effective. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm conscious our time is sort of, now we're at the time for the break. I don't want to encroach on the break time because we have a lot to do after the break. However, during the break, anybody who would like to still try and connect to the Moodle site, we'll be here to help try and debug that and sort that out. But otherwise, we have an 8-minute break now. We'll be back in, 7 minutes now, in 7 minutes time. And so we look forward to, to carrying on again in 7 minutes. Stretch your legs, take a few minutes, and we will see you shortly. Yes, Joachim.
And I'm conscious that we haven't even told you what data science is, so I hope you'll come back and hear that.
I'm sure everybody will be back. So I'm one of those also who has not yet understood this thing. And please, nobody has to panic. I'm sure they will help each and every one of us. But all those who have been able to do it, then you can now have a quick break. So for
Great.
those who need the help, please tell us what to do.
Great. For those who need the help, so there's a few people who have been putting in their email addresses, which this is something where I think Danny is on top of that.
David, could you please just tell us one more time,
Yep.
After we are able to log in, after that, what do we do?
So the one thing which the current task, the only current task you've currently got is, and I will share my screen quickly for this again, share screen, here we go, share, is to go to the introductory forum. And we have now, for example, a few people who have introduced themselves. They have just created a new topic where they've introduced themselves. They've said which institution, they've hoped what they've said something about what they hope to get out of it, and what they're worried about, and something nice which has happened to them. And so that's what all you're going to do as part of this sort of initial interaction with Moodle, is on the introductory forum, write a post where you introduce yourself with your name, your institution, what you hope to get out of the workshops, and anything you're worried about, and something nice which has
Are
happened
you
to you recently.
talking about the second one there? The first one says Q&A for a unified approach based on data. The second one says introduction forum. Is that what it is?
Exactly. You are welcome to use the questions and answers forum to ask new questions. That is there. If there are any questions throughout the talk, now we have this as another mode of communication. Please feel free to add questions based on anything you've heard so far or anything you hear in the later talks, any questions you want to ask. That's what the questions and answers is there for. The introductory forum is what we've just done, and then the other components of things that we will discuss in the next session.
Okay, now that I've clicked on that thing which said introduction forum, sorry, then I
Forum,
see
yep.
this. There's a blue thing which says add a new discussion topic. Is that what I?
Absolutely. Yep.
I should click on that.
If you press that, if you add a new discussion topic, and then you can answer the 5 questions there, and then we will learn a bit more about you.
I don't see any questions there once I've clicked that. I just see.
No, once you've clicked it, I'm afraid the questions were above. I can repeat them here and I can put them in the chat. They were just your name, your institution and role, what you hope to get out of the workshops, anything you're worried about related to the workshops, and then sharing one nice thing that has happened to you recently.
No, but the question is that when I click
Dr.
on this,
Saleh, sorry, you go in downside the side, there is an option administration, type the form. When you subscribe this form, then you will
sorry, I
open
can't
that.
hear you properly. I think David will, I think there's a lot of noise in the background. Thank you for your help, but if you could, I'll just coordinate with David and you could mute your mic because it's being recorded also. Please, I apologize for that. So David, I'm seeing, if I can share my screen, I think that's the best thing. Let me share the screen.
Very good. Go ahead, please.
Other people,
let me stop sharing my screen,
yeah,
and then
this will help other people too. And I think I should do that now. So I'm sharing my screen.
Okay.
I got.
So let me just let you
look.
Carry on.
This is what I got. Then I went. I started moving downwards.
I'm sorry, you're not sharing your screen yet, are you? Oh, yes, there you are. Sorry, my bad.
Okay. See, this is what I got.
Yep. So there, if you look at on your screen now, you have the 5 things that you need to do.
Yes, sure.
The name, the institution and role, and what you want to get out of the workshop. So this is where you now have that information.
Now
yep. And you have
see all this, but then I clicked on this thing, add a new discussion topic.
Exactly. And now you have, yep.
So now
add a new discussion topic, click on it again.
Where do I type my name?
So click on it again. You just, if you click on add a new discussion topic, now you see the discussion topic has appeared below with the subject. So you could make the subject introducing yourself. So this could be Saliha, and you can now introduce yourself as the subject. And then in the message, that's where you respond to the 5 components.
So subject means my name.
So this is the subject of the, in some sense, what you're making here is a post. And so you're posting, and so we know who is introducing themselves. You could say introducing Saliha, or yeah. And so this is what the subject is. So we know this is who is writing about themselves, and we can then see about who different people.
And then
you can write a message.
And then you want all these 5 things to be in that big box. This one.
Exactly. Then you can respond to those 5 things.
Okay. And then once I've done that, then I post it to the forum.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Well, thank you, because I think you've just done a much better demonstration than I did. I apologize for not having been clearer, and this has been a wonderful demonstration for people who are struggling.
Please don't
Thank you.
mind it, but I just felt that there may be other people like me who are not clear about
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. And this is very useful. And one of the reasons that we are pushing this idea of using Moodle in this workshop is exactly because we believe that these technologies can really help. You know, if we can adopt these sorts of technologies, it can help us to have better interactions beyond just the face-to-face interactions we're used to. And with COVID, the importance of these virtual interactions has become ever more apparent. I'm conscious that the break is now officially over. I think we should give people maybe 1 more minute while they sort of come back, or maybe 2 minutes. And so we'll start in just 2 minutes time with the beginning of the next part of the session. Okay, let me share this. So
I will stop sharing the screen and you can continue.
I'm afraid I took it away from you. So I'm afraid you have already stopped.
Okay.
Okay, I think we are almost ready to go. Danny, thank you so much for helping everybody with their accounts. If there are any further problems, please continue on the chat, and he will try to help you in the background while we continue with the session. Okay, I think we're ready to carry on. The next part of this is really about where data science fits into that, and I started to touch on this with my own experience of statistical consulting. That really, in the as soon as you get into sort of deep engaged consultancy now with many partners, you go beyond the needs of traditional research. And when you go beyond the needs of traditional research, you often go beyond the needs of traditional statistics. And so this is something where the question then is, once you start going beyond the needs of traditional statistics, what is it? Is this just part of statistics, which we weren't traditionally taught? Or is this part of data science? And this is really where I would like to start on this. What is data science? And Roger will come in with a definition in a minute, and we'll get into that. But I had these sort of series of things I want to sort of really draw out. That data science is ill-defined. It is currently, it's something people know is exciting, they know is new, they know is important, but what it is depends on who you talk to. Some people feel data science is synonymous to applied statistics. I have a wonderful memory of this question being posed at ISI, at the World Statistics Congress, just a few years ago, to Hadley Wickham. And his answer was a wonderful one. It's one that will stay with me forever, because his answer was, it could have been, but that ship has sailed. And it's a wonderful expression. It's one which I believe, and I think is correct, that if applied statistics had been more inclusive and had noticed the trends that were happening and the needs which led to data science, then applied statistics could simply have claimed all of those as their own, and data science wouldn't really exist. It would simply be part of broader applied statistics.
Sorry, David.
But now,
should we be seeing your
that ship
screen?
has sailed. Yes?
Should we be seeing your
Are
screen?
you not seeing my
You
screen?
still see Saleh's screen? I think.
Yes. Oh. You still
That's
see
great.
Saleha's screen.
People are still seeing my screen.
So let me thank you, Danny, for drawing my attention to that. I will, Saleha, I'm afraid, I thought I had stopped your screen sharing. Aha, that's because there was an option that multiple people could share. So I was sharing, but I was sharing alongside Saleha. Now I have taken over from you. Thank you, Danny. I apologize for that.
No
And so, here, yeah, so I'm going back. So this aspect that data science could have been synonymous to applied statistics, but it can't anymore, is I think a very interesting one. And so that means that there is a genuine difference between data science and applied statistics in the world today. And so really the question becomes, well, what is that difference? Is it big data? And so is data science just big data? So statistics is what you do with sort of manageable data. And then big data, when you get, terabytes of data, that's data science, because you need different techniques, you need different things. And some people would claim that that is the case. Some people would claim that really data science only really comes in once you're starting to analyze tweets at a national scale or international scale to try and extract information in those ways using machine learning algorithms. But I would claim that that's only part of data science, and that and in fact, as we will see very soon, when we look at the book, which we're going to choose as one of the accompaniments to this sort of series, which is again Hadley Wickham's work, or focused on Hadley Wickham's work. It's this sort of R for data scientists. We're going to see that in his case, in that book, they decide explicitly not to work with big data, but to do data science on what they call small data. Is it about market analytics? Now, this is a really important one, that actually in many cases now, data science is not just within, we think of it as a sort of competition between statistics and computer science for who hosts data science internationally. But I've seen more and more cases where the business school gets in on the act and claims, no, we should be the ones who are at the heart of data science. Data science is really about the market analytics. And we will see some examples that Roger will give about how data science, before it was called data science, was recognized and was needed in market analytics. But I would claim again that that is just a subset. And finally, is data science machine learning and or artificial intelligence? This is what many people consider. For many people, data science is synonymous to the tools that they consider to be used for data science. And this one is actually the hardest one to dispel at the moment. And I would claim that for many people internationally, it is very difficult for them to distinguish and to actually explicitly say, to sort of, many would consider data science the tools of machine learning and artificial intelligence that are used to analyze this big data. And so I don't believe it is, and I will come to that in a minute. But I first want to try and answer the question, why is data science not statistics? And in my view, as I have mentioned, I agree with Hadley Wickham's view that it could have been. And it is mainly, in my view, a mistake of historical statisticians to let data escape them. And this isn't necessarily just big data. The example that I keep coming back to, which is still not discussed much, is monitoring and evaluation, which has become a huge discipline in its own right, and which people consider as being totally separate from statistics. And many statisticians wouldn't get too involved in monitoring and evaluation because, well, it's not really statistics. It's just, it's this sort of, you're just monitoring stuff. It's just monitoring and evaluation. And I think historically, when monitoring and evaluation escaped and people started considering it separately from statistics, statisticians weren't worried, but they should have been. When data mining escaped and wasn't considered as part of statistics, that was something that computer scientists did. Statisticians weren't worried, but they should have been. All of these things which were related to data and to working with data, statistics should have owned them, should have embraced them as theirs, and should have made sure they were part of the statistician's library. And the needs of the people who were using them, who embraced monitoring and evaluation as a discipline, who embraced data mining as a discipline, they should have been embraced as statisticians, because they are the foundation from which the separation was created. And when statisticians said, no, they're not real statisticians, that is why, in my opinion, data science is not statistics. It is because for a time, statisticians defined themselves too narrowly. And so when you take these examples of people who work with data, but who don't call themselves or aren't called statisticians, that is when the danger signs were there for statistics and where data science, in my opinion, has emerged. And in my opinion, data science is making the same mistake that statistics made. It is not learning from that mistake. It is not embracing all data. It is, in many cases, it is tying itself to a method. And I will let Roger share one of his favorite sayings on this about statisticians. Roger, do you want to share your saying about statisticians and artists?
Oh, this is in the book by John Nelder at the introduction. He says statisticians, like artists, should be very careful not to fall in love with any one model. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, and one could generalize that in a number of different ways. By the way, I'd like to give another method that escaped because I think we teach statistics so badly, and that is for sociologists and people dealing with people in the 80s, one of the subjects that escaped was participatory methods. And we had lots of people collecting data in participatory ways that were so pleased they didn't have to bother with statistics. And it's taken a long time for them to recognize, as I think the machine learning will recognize eventually, that there are some useful things in statistics. And I was very pleased in Uganda that one of their big poverty surveys, quite a long time ago, 20 years ago now, they had the big poverty surveys and everybody looked at the results. And then they started asking questions that couldn't be answered with the poverty surveys. And so the National Statistics Office in Uganda recognized that in partnership with their standard poverty surveys, they needed to do a participatory poverty survey as well to answer the questions. And so again, this idea of participatory methods with focus group discussions, lots of people are still very pleased that they can forget their hated statistics courses, and it's not true. So as you say, we have a lot to answer for, I think, as statisticians. And maybe we're trying to give one small answer in one or two of these workshops.
And this comes back to the title of this part of the work, this presentation, which is data science unifying the approaches to working with data? Can we have that unified approach? Because that's what's really needed, in our opinion. That, we need to unify participatory methods with quantitative methods. We need to unify traditional statistics with machine learning techniques so that we understand when one can add value, we need to really come back and discuss the objectives. Okay, Roger, shall I hand over to you for this? Or should I carry on?
You carry on.
Okay, so we thought, it's very interesting that Wikipedia has this word unify in its definition of data science. And so, Wikipedia has data science as a concept to unify statistics, data analysts, machine learning, and their related methods to understand and analyze actual phenomena with data. And this is something which rings really true to what we're trying to say, that the emphasis shouldn't be on the tools you're using, it should be on what you're trying to do. I understand and analyze phenomena with data. That's what statistics should have been, and data science now is considered to be it. It says it employs techniques and theories drawn from many fields within mathematics, statistics, computer science, and information science. This idea that, where our academic institutions have divided the fields, the theories, the techniques, we need to unify them. And this is the definition from Wikipedia. This isn't, this is out there. It's not how a lot of people seem to think about it when they actually work with it, but it is a really common concept of what is needed. And that's something which I think when we go back to give some of these examples, we hope will sort of come out. Roger, I'll hand over to you for Tony Woods.
This was just a little story as an aside about one of the lecturers that was also at Reading University. It's good the consultancy work that we had to do took people in directions that they were surprised in. So he was, again, a theoretical statistician, but he was working then more applied. And he had a lot of people from the linguistics department who came to see him. He found so many people that he decided he'd better write a book. And so there is his book on statistics in language studies, written in 1986. And you've seen that it's now things have been updated, and we're going to be discussing R fairly soon. And so analyzing linguistic data using R has done that. But my key point to him is that shortly after that, he left the university because he started working to do some consultancy work for the supermarket firms. And they had just introduced these loyalty cards. And they were now getting information from 5 million customers of all their shopping expeditions and all the things they bought in their shops. And they wanted to use those data. Now, that doesn't sound like big data in these days, but this was 30 years ago. And he suddenly found that he was getting the potential of consultancy rates to cope with those sets of data. Remember, computers weren't like they are now. And so he left, and he became, until he retired, a full-time consultant just on that one area of application, because he could handle the data. And I still think he was well prepared for it by handling other sets of data. It was just another set of data, happened to be a bit larger, and he was quite good at computers. So I thought you might like to see an example of data science of a person who, in my view, left to become sort of a data scientist before data science existed. So he's not very well known. I wouldn't expect anybody to know him, but it's just an ability to do sensible things with data is worth having. Let's carry on.
So what do we mean when we talk about working with data? And we really think this idea that, he had these computing skills. We have to be able to sort of work with data. If you want to become a data scientist, you've got to be able to work with data. But that doesn't have to start with things which are out of reach. Even a spreadsheet is useful. I mean, when you know, the example that Roger gave was one of his final ones, you know, rather than a analysis technique, you know, I don't know of statistical packages that do these heat maps based on pivot tables better than Excel. You know, these pivot tables with heat maps are incredibly powerful to view a certain amount of data and to draw out patterns in ways for specific questions. And spreadsheets can be really excellent for this. Now, of course, if you have really big data, that's not the right tool. And, you know, there's many other things for which a spreadsheet is not the right tool. But if you are starting in a spreadsheet, it is already a good starting place. What you need to recognize then is, though, is when is the spreadsheet not the right tool for the job? If ever you find yourself copying and pasting, if ever you find yourself doing things repetitively, then you need to get help and move beyond a spreadsheet. And then statistical software helps. You know, going from a spreadsheet to statistical software, you know, like SPSS, like a front end to R, like, you know, anything which is a point and click interface is not a big leap. If you're used to using pivot tables in Excel, your data is already ready for a stats package. You can move it from Excel into the stats package very easily. And, you know, there's so much you can do with a basic stats package, with any stats package, just with the point and click interface. Some of the graphs are really powerful. Some of the analyses, you know, the modeling is really exceptional. And so there's, you know, there is no problem when you're starting to work with data going from a spreadsheet to a point and click interface. And if that's where you end up, there's a lot you can do. But there are things where if you're just using the point and click interface, you will find sometimes you just spend ages repeating yourself, doing the same thing over and over again in certain ways. And it's just, you know, you did this analysis last month, and because you've got to do it again this month, it's just, it's tedious. And it's not just that it's tedious, it's ineffective. And so when you're doing repetitive tasks with your point and click interface, you know, that's when you know you need to get help and move on. And that's where statistical languages come in. You know, pretty much all the big stats packages have their own language, but the most famous statistics language of our moment, of our time, is R. And, you know, they're incredibly powerful in what they can do. You can do things in R in ways where you can now automate things that would have been repetitive, and you can tailor them to what you need so that you're getting very quickly these scripts that manage the analyses that you want, the visualizations you want, that produce the outputs that you want. And you can manage them well if you learn how to program in these sorts of languages. But they in themselves do have their own limitations. There are certain methods which, although you can often do through tools like R, they're not the fastest. And if you get really big data, then you'd find that something like R slows down, and you get, you know, it has really high limits that you think you'd never reach until you actually hit the big data or the bigger data. It might not even be big data yet, but the bigger data which reaches those limits. And then suddenly you find yourself in a different place. And then you need to get help. And that's where real programming is needed. And this is where a lot of the traditional things which people think of, I say traditional now in data science, you know, everybody talks about data science as being about the programming. I don't dispute the value of real programming, of programming in Python to manipulate data. And there are tasks for which, if you don't know how to program, you cannot tackle the sorts of data that exist and that get out there and that need to be looked at and need to be investigated. And so the need for programming is real. I was a programmer before I was a mathematician. And it's something which I find myself coming back to time and time again. And in data science, the importance of programming is paramount. But what is interesting is it's not often the most efficient approach. In fact, for many problems, if you only have programming as your tool, you end up being really inefficient. I've got wonderful examples where, I have somebody who hasn't done a graph in ages in R and tries to program a ggplot graph and just can't remember the syntax because it's a quite complicated syntax to use. Whereas you put them into a sort of visual front end and they create the graph in seconds. It's not always the most efficient way. There's always sort of something else you need to do. And, sometimes the manipulations, the information you need are not at your fingertips. And sometimes when you get stuck into the coding, what you find is that people forget to look at what they're doing at every step. They're not looking step by step and, seeing what's happening. And so sometimes when when you're getting stuck into the programming, you miss out on the things that you should be looking at to efficiently make sure you're not making mistakes along the way, and to look at your data at every step, because you're just coding up and you're assuming it's the right thing. And then you have to go back and debug. So it's not always the most efficient approach. It serves its purpose. And this is what we believe more than anything. Really good data science needs a mixture. You don't need to have one of these as the winner, the skill you need. You don't need to have one individual having all these skills, And Roger will tell you that he doesn't do the programming bit much anymore. He sort of stops at the second, the statistical software. But he knows when he needs help, and then he'll call on Danny or myself, on somebody else, because he knows that the problem that he's currently dealing with needs something beyond. He is a data scientist not because he uses the tools that others consider as data science, but because he knows when those tools are needed and can call someone in to do that bit for him. You don't need to do everything yourself, but you can. Yes, and this is sort of something where somebody seems to be drawing on the screen. I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, somebody is drawing on the screen.
Let me just see if I can understand. I might have given people rights on that, but let's see if I go to the next. Let me stop share for a second.
I think you would
there we go. And I will start it again.
And you would need to erase that, I think. You would find
it's okay. I think
eraser.
Yeah. Let me now just restart the share.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I think the point that I want to leave people with here is exactly this point, that really good data science, in my opinion, needs a team of people with different skills. And actually, this is the thing which I believe that we need as statisticians also to recognize. That, when we think about the importance of statistical theory, that has not diminished. If anything, it has increased. However, we might need, and if we look at this example here, we might need 10 people doing work in Excel and spreadsheets on a regular basis to be solving their problems for every person who has the real skills on statistical software who could then step in and they could turn to for help. And you might need 10 such people using statistical software to need to have that person that they could turn to for help for every person who needs to be really good at the statistical language. And you might need 10 of those for every person they would need to turn to go to the really deeper programming needs. And so we're looking sort of as a pyramid, and I don't know what the numbers are. I don't know how many people you need at different levels. But what I do believe fundamentally is that working with data should be a base skill. This is the literacy of the future. The literacy of being able to understand data work with data, to draw out understanding, to draw out learnings, that needs to be like reading and writing in some form. We can't see this as something which is only in the hands of people who have the theoretical knowledge. That doesn't diminish the importance of that theoretical knowledge, but it does maybe switch around the order within which we think about sharing these skills or providing these skills and how we try to link them together. If you have a training of theoretical statisticians without a training of people with the skills to go out there and use data, then it's like having a pyramid without a base, which is, you don't have the strength, you don't have the needs which are there. It's not that those theoretical statisticians don't have skills which would be important. It's that they don't have the people with the sort of simple skills who are then feeding them up the problems. And then you get people like me who have those theoretical skills and has to go back down to the base and work with people in Excel doing simple problems because there aren't the people with those skills to do that. And that's where I think we need to now think about how do we broaden that base? How do we get that base of people with data science skills in the broadest sense of the word? This is people who can work with data, draw out understanding at some level. And we give them more and more skills to be able to do different components. And then you get your experts who have the statistical theory, who have the programming expertise, who can do the specific techniques when they are needed. But we have a broad base of people.
David, can I move you on a bit?
Yeah.
David,
sorry.
We're over time and you've spent a long time on this slide. I think it's time to move on.
Thank you. It's something I feel passionate about, but thank you for moving me on. Roger, I'll hand over to you for this bit.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to be looking at different sections in this R for Data Science book. And, we keep mentioning Hadley Wickham, but I think he has been an exceptional person. And you will see in the next session, when we look at graphs, how that's really the area where he started. So he's written his book, R for Data Science, and that's the limits of where we're getting to. So if you are interested in the subjects that aren't in the book, and you'll see this isn't big data, but we think these are really very exciting methods. And if we could get this far, we'd be doing a lot. So this is where I'm very happy with this book. I'm also very happy this book is available, and his philosophy on these books is it's totally free and it's on the web, and the version on the web is usually ahead of the version that you buy. And so he describes here, you'll learn how to get your data into R, get it into the most useful structure, transform it, visualize it, and model it. And we're not complaining with what's happening in statistics, except that model it is a small part of this book, and it's a large part currently of statistics. So in workshop 2, we're going to be following, if you like, his first part of the book, particularly to visualize the data. And in workshop 3, we're going to be looking at what isn't taught enough and should be even within statistics courses, and that is how to tidy the data. And then, as we've discussed before, we often think that people with data science, they're not sufficiently concerned about the structure of the data, so we're returning to those ideas. This is a nice book, and of course it needs some R, but we will discuss that in a minute. Back to you, David.
Thank you. And well, this is, I think, still the continuation of the reference in that to this book, R for Data Science, where the book will focus proudly on small data sets. That is, data sets which are hundreds of megabytes of data or up to 1 to 2 gigabytes. That is a small data set. And this is really important because actually, in our experience working across the world with this, many people are working with data sets which aren't even close to that. They're just a few lines of data to illustrate a method. But if we start thinking of small data sets correctly as anything which is less than a couple of gigabytes of data, then and we focus on the analysis starting there before we try to get up to the terabytes and beyond, we can learn a lot, and there's a lot that can be done. And there are certain methods which are only appropriate when you get up beyond the gigabytes. But let us start and let us focus on building the techniques on what these consider as relatively small data sets. Roger, shall I let you take us through this part?
Okay, so
I think
we
we
are
might have to
going
go through it quite quickly.
Yeah, we're going
Yeah.
to look at 3 or 4 data sets during these workshops. And the Diamonds data set is from the data science book. And it's a shock to many students that we teach who've had a maximum in a statistics degree of maybe 60 rows of data, that his first example has 53,000 rows. Of course, he doesn't think of that as big at all, but it's very big for many of the people that we're working with, even if they have a full degree in statistics. So we're going to be looking at his standard example, and it's very nicely analyzed in the book. And the next example we want to look at, thank you very much. This is one of these UNICEF mixed surveys, and it's the one from Punjab. I think it's brilliant. This is now the new era that we're in, which is wonderful, that these data are available. They're nicely organized. The results are available. And this is quite recent as well. This is 2017 to 2018. And the data, I don't know if we show an example of the data. Yes, they import very nicely into our little RInstat package, although they are SPSS files. And so we're going to be showing some of the analyses and some of these ideas. We don't have to show the tidying. These are pretty tidy data, but we do have to show our thoughts on some of the bits of analyses. And I was so pleased when we first started discussions that these sets of data are the sorts of things that you're already using in your teaching in Pakistan. That's brilliant. The third example, I just wanted to give you one that really has what I'd call a proper data science component that isn't statistics. And so let's look, I look, as I think many people in the world do, at COVID in the UK and Pakistan. And this is the standard site which has taken it upon itself. And I would like to compare the UK with Pakistan. And the UK doesn't like this comparison because, as you've seen, the UK is 6th or 7th of the worst countries of coping with the virus, and Pakistan is doing much better. And when I ask people in Britain or the politicians in Britain, you know, why is the UK doing so much worse than Pakistan? They get very defensive and they say, this is all the way the data are collected and everything. So they're worried about the things that can't be done. However, there's a lot of things that can be done. And so let's look at the next slide, which doesn't look at all the countries. Here are the daily new cases in the United Kingdom and Pakistan. You may not be so keen on the comparison between countries, but I think it's very interesting how reasonably well there's a lot of information within a country at the time series. So you see that the UK had 3 peaks. One of them was very low, but it was actually very high. It's just that we weren't testing. And then we've had an extremely high peak earlier this year, and that's in the second graph, and now it's come down very nicely. And Pakistan has had 3 peaks as well, and it's sort of coming down. This is interesting. But what's fascinating to me is the next slide. And this is in England now, and I hope you can do the same in Pakistan. I can look each day at what's just been happening. How many people have come out of hospital? How many have gone into hospital? And I can look at each local authority area within the UK from very recently. Now, how did those data get there? Now, that is data science. There's the computing part, that getting those data collected reasonably reliably from everywhere in the UK every day, that's amazing. That's the bit of data science, as David says, there's computing that is almost beyond my comprehension of how efficiently they seem to be doing that. And so many countries seem to do that now. So there's a part of the computing part of data science which enables those data to be put together. Next slide. Next slide. So we're going to show you a bit about corruption. We find people like to think about corruption. They're happier thinking about corruption in other countries than they are in their own country. But we've been noticing that procurement data can really indicate corruption. And this is procurement of all sorts of things, from school furniture, the sort of thing that local education authorities and sort of people might do. And so we've been involved in that. And there again, there's a statistics component, and we get involved in that. And there's, I think, a data science component that is a different group that scrapes the information from the web to provide the data. And it's interesting that it's available in a lot of countries, but not very completely. But nevertheless, it can provide some very interesting data. So we're going to look at corruption as well. And lastly, I'm afraid you can't get away from it. Because I'm interested in climatic data, I'm very grateful. This was put together before we got the data from Pakistan, but we have daily climatic data from 4 stations in Pakistan provided by the Met Service locally here, and I'm very grateful. And there's all sorts of applications that one can have of the historical climatic data. That's not necessarily very large, but it's large enough to be daunting to many people, and many what I call statistics problems. And some people would say that's data. This is all data science, isn't it? So these are among the examples that we are going to go through. David, do you want to do this?
I'm happy for you to start, and then I'll come in, particularly at the end.
I just wanted to refer to the fact that we tend to distinguish between 3 sorts of data. You have a lot of experimental data, and we've seen with COVID that if those clinical trials hadn't been handled in a statistical and highly efficient and wonderfully impressive way. So those are experiments where they were double-blind experiments where people got one treatment or another treatment. And I'm, of course, very familiar with agricultural experiments on plants and animals, where the user dictates what treatment different plots of land get. So experiments have treatments, they have layout, like the blocks, and then you measure things. Surveys, like the Punjab Mix Survey, you don't have a treatment you apply, but you have things you record. So it has layout. And usually these are cluster samples, and then you subsample in different ways, and these can be quite complicated. So you don't have treatments, but you have the layout and the measurements. And one aspect of surveys is often you have many measurements. So the mixed surveys has something like 400, up to 400 measurements, different measurements, different columns of data, and about 45,000 rows, although sometimes more. But most statisticians are happier dealing with the experiment and the surveys. The routine data, well, that's like the data that I just showed you about COVID. That's routine data that's collected. My climatic data was not collected for any particular purpose of using the historical data. It was collected to provide the weather forecast. And the feature, I think, of data science is it makes much more use of these huge sets now of routine data that are just being collected. And there's lots and lots of uses of them. And so whereas statisticians tend to worry about how it's collected, sometimes when the data sets are very large, however it was collected, there's very interesting information there. David.
And really, when you think of this distinction into 3 types, this is a statistician's distinction. You know, as data scientists, they talk about other things because they're really living in number 3. They're not designing things. You know, arguably, this is sort of really split into 2. It's about the sort of things which have been carefully designed and things which are less structured and less designed. And I think one of the things which I'm more and more interested in is the fact that, Roger gave the option, the sort of surveys as being something which is often conducted by statistical officers. But what we're finding is that in many cases, in research that would have been experimental in the past, actually what you're wanting is observational studies. What you're wanting are more sort of survey things, because you're trying to understand things in different contexts in different ways. And so actually what's needed more generally, and actually and similarly the experimental, there's many cases now where you can get elements of experiments at larger scales, through citizen science or through these larger scale experiments. Because of the changes in how data is collected. And so even if you take the designed data, there's really good reasons why we can and should be learning from some elements of data science, of how data is collected, stored, transferred quickly, how you can be doing your analysis as data is being collected, rather than waiting 3 years in certain cases, and recognizing that there are things where you do need to wait 3 years or 20 years to be able to answer certain questions. And so actually recognizing and differentiating between the different types of not just data, but questions and objectives that we need to look at when we're then looking to get data or to use data. What are the questions? What are the objectives of the studies? That's really at the heart of what we're trying to do. And the routine data, the final thing I would like to leave us with is an experience from this group of the Farmer Federation who I worked with. And one of my fondest memories of actually the support I was able to give to them is they were working with researchers, and they wanted to do, and with the researchers they'd agreed, they wanted to do a typography of their farmers. And the researchers were saying, well, what sample do you want to take? And the Farmer Federation said, we don't want to take a sample. We want to do it on all our farmers. And the researchers said, no, our methods only work for samples. And one of my most enjoyable moments was to be able to sort of support the Federation to sort of help the researchers to recognize that actually, no, of course you can take a census data, you can take data on all the farmers. That's better in this case. It might require you to adapt your methods, to change your methods, to rethink. But if you have that opportunity, normally it would be too expensive. But as a farmer federation, they could do this. So, and not only could they do this, but by doing it in this approach, they could do it so that they could get longitudinal data as well. So instead of taking a single time point, they could actually be getting census data over time, looking at the evolution of their farmers. And suddenly the data that the researchers get back is incomparable. It's much richer, much more accurate, much better quality than anything they could have had access to before. And yet it is the alternative data sources which are making that possible. By and large, we're not, as statisticians, as researchers, they're not the people who are actually making the biggest advances necessarily in data quality. And that's what we need to change. We need our statisticians to be able to be the ones, recognizing these new opportunities for better data, for better information, and enabling that to happen, and for us to take advantage of that by understanding the limitations as well as the opportunities that come with these new data sources. So we're going to finish this part, and I know we've gone considerably over time on what we wanted to do for this part, but I hope you'll forgive us for that. And the last thing that we'd like to sort of share is really a section which corresponds to James Musyoka, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, but he will be here in the future. And it's just, there's 3 points that we'd like to sort of draw out from you know, it's not just his work. There's others who have been deeply involved in this, and I know both Joyce and Thomas are here, and they've been part of that, you know, a lot of these processes. So, but James has really sort of been at the forefront of a lot of these things.
David,
We'd
can
like
I
to
question?
draw out. Yep.
David,
Yep.
can I just question whether we do want to include this today, or we start with it in the second workshop?
Okay, we could start the second workshop with this when James will be with us.
Yes.
I think the thing which I think would have been useful about this is that the sort of what of the things that we wanted to share now with people were some of these ideas, you know, that we're going to be using in the subsequent workshops. So the reason I think, yeah, we won't spend time on this now, and we'll let James introduce it in more detail at the beginning of the next workshop, given we're over time. But our Instat, this is work which has come out, which James was at the forefront of, which is where we're enabling people to take that first step from Excel towards to a statistics package with an open source front end to R, which is trying to make that easier. And the hope is that that also makes the transition into then learning to use R as a language easier, so that the first 3 levels that we mentioned before are all within reach and all open source, and you can access, they're accessible. The learnings from CAST, I think it's worth just mentioning the work of Doug Sterling. And what is phenomenal in his work is in some sense how understated it is. That he did an incredible amount of work where some of the real insights are almost lost in just the sort of scope of work that he did. But the real power of his work, a lot of it was in the work that he did around automated assessments within the CAST system, and that enabled better use of estimation. And this is something we'll come back to. And so being able to sort of test students and help students to learn how to estimate means, median, standard deviations, how to look at data and build an intuition for data. And the importance of that is something where within his work, he is not the only person to have worked on this. There's a lot of wonderful work in stats education on this, but he did actually get some very good tools which really helped that get out to students. And then finally, the thing which again James can talk about, which I think is important, is that some of the opportunities for reform, and I think as there are a lot of educators on this call, the thing which I think is the most insightful about sort of some of the learnings we have with him is this aspect that you don't need to change the curriculum to reform teaching practices. Often that can be done within the structures that already exist. You can take a descriptive course and you can really transform it without changing its nature. And similarly, when you do get the opportunity to change curriculum, you can change it not just to what you can do now, but looking forward to where things are going, and so that you can get those changing practices coming in over time. And so that this sort of there is this opportunity to iterate between improving teaching practices and improving curriculum, and try to sort of gradually make progress. It doesn't need to be a revolution. It can be an evolution. Sorry, so that's where I will leave it at that, and I think we'll move on to the final bit.
David, Roger
yes.
and David, I would like you to know that Dr. Alia, who was going to address for a short while, she has internet connection. So those 5 minutes that she would have utilized, you can utilize them, I think. And so that, because of all these problems, sometimes we have electricity failure, sometimes other. So that's why we try to remain flexible in this. So therefore, if you like,
Absolutely.
I think she may not be, although we are wanting her to, but she might not be able to connect.
Yep. Okay, that is great. Thank you for letting us know. We will still try to finish on time in 20 minutes, But given how late we're running, we're already sort of 25 minutes late. We will see. We're going to have to cut down the interactive session a little bit. I think, given the difficulties people have had with accessing Moodle, this is okay. That it's something which can happen beyond this session. But I would like to sort of share the Moodle screen again and to just very quickly talk people through some of the ideas that we had here and some of the things that we've put up that people can interact with. So let me just change my screen share so that this is now, you should be seeing my Moodle screen. So the book R for data science, we have provided a link to that here. I will turn the week 1 forum. There are 2 posts in here which we would like to encourage you to sort of reply to, interact with, and look at. This is what we would have gone into smaller groups to discuss and to engage with. And it's maybe the most important component of this is the fact that we really believe that data is at the heart of the workshops that we want to give. And so we want to make sure that we have examples that are relevant to you, that we include examples that are relevant to you, and that we respond and interact with you with you as participants in ways which we hope will be of interest and of use. And then the second one is actually the data analysis software. And this is something where, you know, as we've sort of said, you know, it doesn't matter, even if you are only really comfortable in Excel, or if you are somebody who is a programmer, you know, we're happy to try to meet you where you are and try to move with you from there to try and engage in these skills of statistical consultancy and data science. And so, yeah, sharing what you use, discussing different software options that people want to use is something we'd like to encourage in this forum. And then finally, we've got then additional resources. We've got things like CAST, which was mentioned. We've got our Instat, the case, which will be presented sort of next week. But if you don't have statistical software and you'd like to use this, next week will not next week, sorry, it's in 3 weeks' time. So next time we'll include a really interactive session where we would like people to be working with and interacting with data in the session. And so we would be expecting people to have something that they're happy working with data on, and we would provide data sets in a CSV format where people would then be expected to then interact with those data sets on their machine, and would put you into sort of small groups to then have those discussions. And if you don't have statistical software and you would like statistical software for this, then we've provided resources about our Instat, which will be sufficient for everything we want to do. And finally, there is also a quiz at the bottom. And this quiz is one where, if we'd had time, I would have encouraged us to have a go at it now. And this quiz just has 3 questions. These are not questions. You can do the quiz as many times as you want, and your grade will be the highest grade. This is not a test for you, but it is something which we would like to sort of really emphasize. And this is the fact that actually, if you're going to do statistical consultancy, estimating is a key skill. We need to be able to estimate. We need to be able to look at data and say, yes, I understand what that means. So if I look at a summary of, and I have a mean, I can then sort of put data to it and try to get a feeling for what it would mean. And we will come back to this next week, so next time, in 3 weeks' time, because this is going to be at the heart of the visualization session. But having a go at that quiz, I hope will just get you, and we have to give credit, of course, to Doug Sterling and CAST, because this quiz is built with different technologies, but it's inspired by Doug's work with CAST. And so that's just talking you through what's in the Moodle site. If we'd had a bit more time, I would have liked to encourage people to do the quiz. So if you want to do that in the background, please have a go. And I would have liked to encourage people to go into the week 1 forum and respond and interact with these 2 posts. Remember, and I will check here, at the moment we don't have anything, but please feel free to use the questions and answer forum to be able to interact with each other and us on anything which we've discussed today.
Could you,
Okay.
David, could you tell us
Yep.
a little more about the week 1 forum? Exactly what do you want us to do?
So yes, and it shouldn't really be called week 1, should it? It should be topic 1 or a workshop 1 forum. I'm sorry, I will change that. But this has 2 posts in it. If you look at this post, it has 1 post about data analysis software. And this is really what we'd like to be doing through the course of these 5 workshops. As of the 2nd workshop, we intend to have interactive sessions in the workshop where people will be using their own software on their own machines to look at data. We'll be sending data in something like a CSV format, which anyone can look at, and just encouraging people to look at it on their machines. If you have software you use that you're comfortable using to look at data, to explore data, we want you to use what you're comfortable using. If you don't, we would suggest that you might want to try using our Instat as something which can do everything we're going to do, and for which we will be providing sort of guidelines on how to do things, so that people who aren't yet comfortable using statistical software can learn a bit of that. But if you are using statistical software of some form, please let us know about it, and then we'll try to at least mention it or make sure that what we're asking is appropriate, and just keep engaged with you on that. We believe that any software you want to use, be it SPSS, PSPP, whatever you want to be using, that you feel suits your needs, we believe you should be able to use that for all the tasks that we provide through the course of this workshop.
So,
and the 2nd post is about data, and where you could share the data, the types of data that you work with. And so again, statistical consultant is all about understanding what people are actually working on, and we'd like to make sure that what we share is as relevant as possible to you as participants. And so please use this and reply to this to give us information about the sort of data that you work with, and we'll try to include something which is relevant wherever possible.
So, David, am I correct in understanding that whatever communication we have to have with you during these 3 weeks, that will be happening through this platform that you have given us?
Yeah. So the idea is that by having these communications through the Moodle platform, it is not just with us. It is something which now you can build a community together on this in a way which we can now try to get each other interacting. This will be a facilitated course, so if you are there, actually James plays an excellent role as a facilitator of e-learning, and so he will be helping us to facilitate this offline in the intermediary times, and to make sure that people are responded, they're listened to, that the right people are available to respond. And so we'll try to make sure that this is as facilitated as possible. But yes, if you do interact with us through this platform, then we will be able to better share that with others, and make sure that the questions that somebody asks are also, if they're relevant for others, then they can share in them as well.
Okay. So, David, do you want me to proceed to the next section, that is feedback from participants?
So
Or would you?
I would
or-
like to have just 2 more minutes where we'd just like to have some things on what we had in the program was sort of, it said problem solving, but we'd actually meant to change that to objectives and the importance of objectives. And we've said quite a lot about this already, but Roger, do you want to just make some final remarks about that? The importance of objectives related to data science and statistical consulting.
Why don't you carry on?
Okay, maybe the only thing that I'll add to what we've already said on this is that is that basically at the heart, it doesn't matter whether you're doing data science or statistics. In our opinion, at the heart of what you need to do when you're working with data is you need to ask yourself, what is the objective? What is it you're trying to learn from this data? And that is what should determine the tools, because if we start with a certain question, then with the same data, with the same resources, we could actually use different tools to answer different questions. And that's really at the heart of what we believe is sort of important, that these objectives need to be sort of guiding us, not just in how we collect data or in what data we use, but taking a data science lens. It's also when you have data, there are still different objectives that data can answer. And in some ways, I would argue this distinction of objectives is really the distinction which I believe now exists between statistics and data science. With statistics, you have objectives and you then design data collection tools to collect data to answer those objectives. And with data science, you have data and you then have objectives through which you use that data to answer those questions. And so it's just a question of order. And of course, it is beautiful because really good data collection is cyclic. And so if you do both, if you have data which is both designed and you then use it to answer other objectives after it's been collected, and then you collect more data and you close the cycle, then we see that we have a unification of our statistical and our data science techniques and our needs and our methods. That's what I wanted to finish with then, and I think we should now move on to the final section. Thank you, Saleha.
Saleha, just let me add one point to you. Yep.
Yes,
I'm just adding
go
one point before. So I'm hoping now that as we come towards the end of this first session, that one of the points we wanted to make is that we do think, we hope that you can learn by just attending the sessions. You don't have to use the Moodle site and do the work in between. But we do hope you will, and we think you will find there's more to be gained by spending at least an hour or a few hours in following through, and you can see the tasks we've given here. And if you, as David says, if you're very comfortable with a particular software package like SPSS or like R, then that's absolutely fine. If on the other hand, you'd like to try a new package, then our little R Instat is based on R and adds a front end. And you might like to use some time before the next session to download it and install it. Let us know if there's problems. And then we've put some tutorials there, and we hope you can very easily go through those tutorials. And we hope you'll find that you're pleasantly surprised that you've never seen R quite so easy as that to be able to use. And so that's a facility available for you. And then, as David says, if you're very experienced with Moodle, then we think you'll quite like doing some of these tasks. But if you're not, we think it's very illuminating to actually force yourself to contribute to these forums and to answer these questions and then to interact with us. And it's part of this learning. And I've seen it. One of the things we're going to do better next time is to respond to the items in the chat, which you've been making, and that's been very interesting. And we've ignored completely. We won't ignore those next time, But the idea of the situation here is that it isn't just that the questions and answer are always asked by you and answered by us. It all becomes a team approach now, and we hope you're going to enjoy it and have fun.
Okay, thank you so much.
And just
Yes,
to sort of comment on that as well, some of these questions, ideally, we would like to repost them or for them to be reposted on Moodle. And so either we could repost them, or even better, if you posed a question in the chat and you're comfortable reposting it in Moodle, that would be really great, because that way we can actually take the time to respond and to have that discussion and that conversation about it. And so, so this is sort of particularly on, can we use a particular software? It's a wonderful question, which would be great to have in the Moodle site itself. The short answer will be yes. The bit longer answer will be what for? And is it right for all the tasks? That's the question which we will be then reiterate on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. What I think we should now do is to go to the next thing that we had written in the plan. That is the feedback from the participants, because I feel that, we have so many people here and we have such experts sitting here also attending this workshop. So I think we can get some very good suggestions. So please, ladies and gentlemen, I think it would be great if you could please not be shy and say whatever you would like to say here now, so that for the remaining 4 workshops, they can be even better than what we all experienced today. Anybody would like to start? Just unmute and
May I ask a question?
yes.
This is Abdul Salam from State Bank of Pakistan. David, thank you very much for a nice presentation. Well, you mentioned about data collection, David. These days we collect data online through web scraping, right? So I appreciate if you can put some light on web scraping and include it in the contents. Thank you so much.
Okay.
David,
thank you. That's a great question.
Yes, I think the gentleman, Mr. Abdul Salam, he is from the State Bank of Pakistan.
Yeah.
So
no, I think this is a
yes.
So this is a really good question. It's a very I think this is something which will definitely come in the 5 workshops. It is most likely going to come in either in workshop 3 or workshop 5. And we will, but absolutely, we will make sure that we include that as something which is discussed within the workshops.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Any of our guests from other countries also? Please go ahead.
Hello.
Or
Hello. Yes.
Yes.
Roger, it's a pleasure to listen to both of you, David and yourself. And it's very interesting. I'm not a statistician by profession, but I have been using statistics to analyze my data, which included many people in terms of participatory plant breeding work, surveys, and focus group discussions, and other designed surveys and all that. I was interested to attend this course not as a statistician, but as a applied person. How can I get best out of my data in terms of various analyses, various applications that you have been describing, very interesting. And I was more interested to use your R instead for application purposes, looking for even climate data also. We have climate data, we have similar data, surveys data. And today's session has been very useful in that sense. But I tried to do some exercise on your R instead, which I have downloaded. I could do your first introductory, but I find it a bit difficult to enter data into the table because it doesn't give any spreadsheet. And I think you are still modifying the program. Maybe later on you have provision for copying and pasting the data from Excel sheet, which doesn't do it now. and I have to get it through Excel sheet. But in the Excel sheet, you do so many other lousy things, and it opens as such. So it's not possible unless you generate a different Excel sheet which is clean, you know. So are you doing this, and will you be updating our instead and let us know, or will there be update to be downloaded, or the program has to be downloaded again when you modify it? Because it's still in the formative state, and I don't know how long it will take to complete it along with these instructions. Can you just give me some information on that, please?
Roger, do you want to respond or should I?
Thank you for those very detailed questions. The answer is yes, we are continually updating the software, and we have been slow on the copy and paste in, as you heard, we have mixed views on copying and pasting. But we'd be very happy to talk to you about the data coming from Excel, and the next version will have copy paste. Yes, we are steadily making improvements, and it's not there yet. Especially, I would say, we want to learn from you, so it does more things that are relevant for a crop breeder. So yes, we haven't finished. We come back and happily discuss within the 3 weeks. So it's even better for you by the second workshop.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, next.
Dr.
Please.
Nagmi, I have a question.
Yes, sure.
Good evening, Dr. Roger Stern and Dr. David Stern. Although we got a chance to meet you physically, Dr. David Stern, this is Dr. Kulsom, heading statistics department at Kinnaird College, and we were quite happy to meet you because you see the kind of enthusiasm you have for the subject and the insight you have had into the subject. That was really wonderful, and we have enjoyed a lot your talk and the thoughts you have had about the future of statistics. So my question at the moment is, first of all, I would like to thank both of you for the wonderful workshop that we had. My question is that, you know, in order to, although you have, both of you have explained that what are the, it is actually the mix of many techniques that are being required to cope with the, you know, data science, but what do you think that, what are the most appropriate, you know, what you call that, techniques, or what you call that expertise that we require in order to cope with it? Because as you have mentioned that here in this part of the world, we are sort of good in theory of statistics, but somehow we miss that applied part of statistics because we have been taught that way. So what do you think what we could do in order to cope with these data science and its techniques so that we should get into it?
That's a really wonderful question, and I'm afraid there are no easy answers. But my suggestion is, and this is again from my experience, mainly working with universities across Africa that are trying to make changes. And where I've seen the most positive changes are where they have been incremental. So my suggestion, my first suggestion is, don't throw away what you have. You know, build from what you have. What you have might not be perfect. It might not be right, but it's something that you probably do well. So start by building on what you have. From what you have, identify a key next step, something which you don't have, which you recognize as a gap. It might be the tidying data. That is something you haven't prioritized. Or it might be something on data collection. We heard about the need for sort of scraping data from the web. It might be sort of interesting new ways of collecting and acquiring data. That could be something else, which is maybe not taught. And then find ways to integrate that in and provide some of these extensions of things which you don't currently have, some of the skills you don't currently have in your courses, and add those as you go along. And so instead of trying to revolutionize, try to evolve. And so to me, my first advice is, don't throw away what you have, which is good. Add to it. Identify the points where you can now say, okay, we're not giving people experience with data which has tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of rows. So we need to add that. Okay, now we're doing that. We're not giving people this. Let's add that. And so gradually think of how you add and you integrate these newer ideas rather than throwing away what you already have. That is my main
Okay,
advice.
thank you. Thank you very
Could
much.
we, could you
Can
also
I-
put that question onto the Moodle site? Because I think it's a very good question to start a rich discussion, which could take place over the whole of the 5 sessions.
Yes, that is very important. Actually, from the beginning, I've been trying to convey this to everybody that it will be useful if we attend all 5 of them, because it's all in a continuity. And I just want to share with everybody that Dr. Alia Ahmed, who was having the internet problem, I now see her icon here. Dr. Alia, are you there? Dr. Alia? I was just able to see her icon. So I think she would like to talk to us if maybe she's got disconnected again. Iftikhar Sahib, maybe you can find out for us. In the meantime, I would like to ask some other people also to give their input. Aisha Bilgin, would you like to say something?
I'm really happy to listen to Roger and David with the examples they provide from their real life. That makes this workshop really unique. It's really important to have the experiences shared. And I just looked at the quiz myself. I was a bit scared to do the quiz. What if I fail? Luckily I passed, but I haven't achieved 100%. So I apparently just looking at visually the graphic to estimating standard deviation is really stressful. But I really suggest you to have a go as well, because we do assess our students all the time. When the time comes to us to be assessed, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to make myself fool if I can't get it right. I got most of the things right, but standard deviation from the graphic, I mean, it's really mind-boggling. It's really opened my eyes to see that it's really important to have a guess before you make a calculation and things like that, because first thing comes to my mind, just write down all the values and put it in the software and calculate it. But I took the advice and estimated it, and I think we should all do that. It's really useful to see what does happen. I always emphasize visualization is really important, but that little tool shows you how important it is. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Can I just emphasize that, as David has said, this isn't testing you. And we find for the students as well, that these are mastery exercises. This is helping you to master an idea. So the exercise is for your benefit, whereas most people only know about tests for the benefit of the lecturer to see where the student has got to. These are for the benefit of everybody, but when you do it, it's for your own benefit. Nobody will look at the answers in that way. And you can repeat it as many times as you like. You get a slightly different data set. So it's really to help learning concepts. And we do believe that one of the aspects of this is when you compare it to a book where the answers are given, the book can't relate the answer to your answer. It just has, it's dead. Whereas here, the software is relating the answer to what you give. So if your answer was too big, it could say, could you be a little smaller in this? And that is wonderful. There's lots of potential, which James will talk about with this method of not just assessment, but mastery that we will discuss next time.
Thank you, Roger. But I have a very important suggestion here for everybody. I have actually conveyed this to Roger and David earlier when I was having Zoom meetings with them. I feel that we should have groups of, all these audience who are here now. We should get into groups of maybe 3 persons so that the group meets during these 3 weeks. These groups, they can meet. And I think speaking of cultural differences, which I mentioned in the beginning, I think in Pakistan, it would work. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I'm right. In Pakistan, at least, it would work well if I, for example, know that I have to work with, for example, anybody. I mean, two of the other people who are here. So then we fix a time, and then we struggle with that standard deviation thing, or whatever we have to struggle with. We can do it together. That's my suggestion. What do other people think? Tabaraka, Rajab, please aap karein. You can talk about it. Uzma, everybody. You don't have to think that you have to be the age-wise the senior most person to speak up. Everybody is equally invited, equally welcome to please speak up and say whatever is coming to your mind. No, I'm not
Uh,
getting.
yes.
Okay. All right. This is Mr. Jawad. Okay.
Mr. Jawad, I have detailed meetings with Dr. David Stern. There is impressive meetings combined with other people, especially under the supervision of Dr. Saleha. I think we are the teachers, and we should take it these workshops for teachers, but student oriented. I saw the softwares when I met Dr. David Stern. These software are very helpful in statistical teaching. This is entirely a different approach. Normally we are studying statistics, but Dr. David Stern and I then followed on different things, TED Talk and on other places. If you see when Dr. David Stern speaks, he speaks from his core of heart. He's working excellent. I think more and more people must join these type of workshops that are taking us to modernize our teaching, especially statistical teaching. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you very much. Actually, I'm sorry to cut you, but it's 5:59 p.m. on my computer. So I think I will ask now everybody to continue on the Moodle or in the WhatsApp group or otherwise. But I would now like to request Professor Muhammad Aslam, our senior most team member, Pi-Star, to present the vote of thanks because it is already 6 p.m.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Salia. Have you slides for me, or I will read from myself?
I can share the slides, so I will do that now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I can try to do that. I hope you can see my slides now.
Yeah,
I think you might. One moment. Okay. Here we are.
Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I will try to put it in the slideshow mode again, but it keeps, it's just sometimes it gets stuck. Anyway, this is the vote of thanks to be presented at the conclusion of the first workshop of a series of 5 online workshops on data science ideas for aspiring statistical consultants, to be presented by Professor Muhammad Aslam, statistician Pi-Star, focal person of the Pi-Star Consultancy Services Initiative, and also head of the statistics department, chairman of the department at FC College for many, many years, which is a chartered university now. And he has now retired from there, but he's an active member of Pi-Star. So please go ahead, Professor Aslam.
Thank you, Dr. Salia. Respected resource persons, Professor Roger Stern and Dr. David Stern, Dr. Alia Ahmed, Chairperson, Pi-Star Executive Board, Dr. Salia Nagmi Habibullah, Director Pi-Star, Mr. Muhammad Iftikhar, Executive Secretary, ISAS Pi-Star, Dr. Wasim Abbas, focal person, PyStar International Training Program, all other dynamic members of the PyStar team, our most respectable and dear national and international participants, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, the same problem again. It just stuck. I'm so sorry. It will have to be. I have to stop sharing. This is not going to work. Sorry for that. I will have to put it in the.
If you
other
have some
mode.
problem, I can read from my paper.
Yes, please do. Please do. Go ahead.
Okay, it's my great pleasure to present the vote of thanks at the conclusion of the first workshop of a series of 5 workshops on data science ideas for aspiring statistical consultants. The workshop has been very interesting and fruitful, for which we are highly obliged to our learned resource persons, Professor Roger Stern and Dr. David Stern. Their insight and skillful way of presentation made the workshop so valuable for the participants. We are thankful to participants for showing keen interest during workshop and asking questions, relevant questions that added to the utility and quality of the workshop. We appreciate with thanks the untiring efforts and hard work put in by Dr. Saleh Nagmi Habibullah, convener of the workshop, and her team, without which this workshop would not have been possible. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is 4 minutes past. So I really, as David said earlier, we have to respect people's time. We will, of course, I will also write to you. I think Roger and David will write to you. And you do please try to engage with the Moodle. And just a few words I do want to say before I actually stop saying things. I just wanted to share with you some of the takeaways that I had from today's workshop. I appreciated very much these words that good data science needs a mixture of of the various types of expertise that is required. It's a mixture. The other thing I appreciated was this mention of routine data. It's actually a new term for me because I did not know that this is it a technical term already being used all over the world, or is it how Roger uses this is a term invented by Roger, I'm not sure. But routine data sounds good. And why I'm appreciating this is because all my life I had been trained in such a way that I always emphasized that we should have a well-defined population, and then we draw a random sample out of it. That's how we do statistics. But now that we have this routine data, as I speak, every second, every minute, more data is being generated. So this concept of drawing a random sample from a well-defined population, this is then challenged. The next thing, one more thing which I appreciated was this little mention of our being able to go from the summary to the data itself. I mean, all my life I had been trained that I have data or collect data somehow, some little tiny bit of data, and then I compute the summary statistics. So this is the opposite, from summary to data. And then the last thing I want to talk about is R in stat. Just like many of you, I myself am very keen to learn it because I think that in developing countries, it is very important that we use the open source software. you know, it's an open secret that copyright violations occur when we are not able to purchase highly expensive software. So I'm sure that Roger and David will be guiding us about it from next workshop onward. We will not be presenting any of your resume in the next one, Roger, so that you are not daunted. So all that time will be saved also, and you can start very quickly. And so with this, I think it's time to say goodbye. But before that, if all of you would open your cameras, we can have a group photograph. That would be very kind. All those of you who are not shy, please do open your cameras so that we can have a group photograph. Thank you very much for that. Okay, there's still many who are not. Aksa and Kamal, I hope you're taking all the screenshots. And I'm sorry I did not get a chance to ask every single one of you to speak during this time, but I can stay here and we can maybe, David, I don't know if you have another workshop, then you help to stop. But otherwise, I would also like to hear from Joachim. Joachim was the president, the current president of the ISC. If you could also say a few words, but anybody who has to leave, of course, it's now time to leave. Thank you very much for this screenshot. And Aksa and Kamal, please note that you have to click on the arrow on the left side or the right side, because you know there are so many people that you cannot get them in one. Okay, thank you very much. So now I think the recording can still be kept on. I hope if it's okay. So Joachim, would you like to say a few words for those who are still here? And
you're
those
muted,
who want to
Joachim.
leave, you are welcome to. Yes.
You're muted.
Yeah.
It looked good.
Okay. A big thanks once again to Celia. In these days of restricted travel and inhibited contacts, it's so important, and your workshops are an excellent example that help us to stay in contact and to learn from each other, to communicate, to teach each other, and that's one of the great things that we learned over the past year, how that helps us to keep on learning and growing in our knowledge. And of course, a big thanks to David and to Roger for their excellent workshop. And I mean, I know how much both of you are devoted to helping people around the globe to make sense of the data, and your series of workshop is another highlight. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Attila from Turkey, would you like to say something?
Well, I have learned a lot from data science. I might be working in the next year within a data science department in Ankara. I'm planning to do that, and it was very wonderful workshop. Really, I enjoyed very much. And I'm also I also failed with the standard deviation with like Aisha. I should have just probably take the range and divide the range by 4 to get the standard deviation. Somehow I didn't figure out there. I just estimated the standard deviation to be 20, which is shame on me, because I should have known how to get it. And even I was a failure with the median too, actually. I overestimated the median anyway, but it's really good. I was also trying to install the R instant. I couldn't find a link to install it. Is there a link? Can you share in the Moodle
Yep,
that
we can share the link for that.
install it? There's no link, and from the Google I can't find the the software to download, and do I need the R project installed on my machine then to run the R instant?
So the link is in the Moodle site, but I
It
will
is like a
provide you the
YouTube
link
link.
again.
I click on the link,
No, that's it. Sorry.
somehow it directs me to YouTube link, so it's only a video. It's
No,
not
sorry. There is another one a
software.
bit lower down. Sorry, let me just share my screen on this to help you.
And after that, I will request Henry Quetta to say a few words.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So there's the case for the RInstat software, and then there is the RInstat software itself. And so the case is the video, and the RInstat software. I will make this clearer.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Eket, would you like to say something now? Maybe.
Oh, thank you, Saleha. This is really a great opportunity for us, a learning opportunity for everyone, especially for most of us who are more into the statistics, and now we open the horizon towards data science to cope with the challenges of these times. Thank you. And it's good to see everyone here, especially those I've met in previous conferences in statistics, that we are meeting again virtually. So great to see you all. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much.
In a long time.
Would you like to say something, Thomas first? Thomas, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. It was a great session. I actually look forward to the more interactive sessions, starting with the second one also. But it was quite an eye-opener for me, actually, to really place data science in its context. So I look forward to learning a lot more. Thank you, Professor Saleh and Professor Roger and Dr. Stan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Olawale, Dr. Olawale Awe, would you like to say something? Dr. Asifa Kamal, would you like to say something?
Thank you, Dr. Saleha. It is a wonderful workshop. I always appreciated your struggle for contribution in the context of teaching statistics, and it is very interesting to learn about the link between data science and statistics, and also about our instant introduction of our instance. Our students are quite afraid of writing codes, and it is wonderful to get familiarized with them with R instant. When they will become comfortable, they can easily work on R. I hope so. So it is a very good workshop. Thanks to Team PyStar for organizing workshop and giving us an opportunity to learn. Thank you, Dr. Saleha and Dr. Professor
Thank you so much. Aksa is one of the students here. So as Mr. Jawad was saying, that it should be student oriented. So Aksa, would you like to say something? Aksa Rafiq. And we have Muhammad Saeed. Would you like to say something?
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
First of all, I want to thank Dr. David and to you and Dr. Roger for their wonderful session. And I will hopeful that next time the session will be more interactive and more interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, Roger and David, I think it's time to say bye-bye for now. But I do have one feeling. I have a feeling that like me, many of us now actually want to get to do something. So let's get to, hopefully we'll have a lot of things to do ourselves during the workshop also, because in the first one, of course, we needed all the introductions, which are excellent. But
so maybe just in response to that, I think this is very much our intention. One of the things we felt was important is that in the first workshop, we wanted to get people familiar with Moodle, so that a lot of the interactions can happen through Moodle, so that the tasks you will be doing in the subsequent workshops will broadly be given through Moodle, and that will facilitate that interaction. So if there is a preparation for the next workshops and for that interactivity, it is to really just make sure you're familiar with using Moodle, you're able to discuss, use the forums on Moodle, and we will use that to then enable this interaction and the more interactivity that we intend to have in the subsequent workshops. But a lot of that interaction will happen through Moodle.
Right.
So thank you, everyone, and we look forward to that additional interactivity.
Dr. Saliha, one thing is notable in this whole workshop. Dr. Roger and Dr. David Stern has emphasized the use of Microsoft Excel, spreadsheet, pivot tables, etc. And we have recently successfully conducted a workshop on Microsoft Excel. This is also a guideline from the meeting with Dr. David Stern when he came to Pakistan in a conference.
Yes, yes, certainly. Okay, maybe we can now say goodbye. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and Allah Hafiz.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Salia.